Rush after making his team play the worst comps humanly possible. Capitology after doing literally nothing except doing a T sign one time. There's no way it's me, guys. I'm not coach of the year, but I'm not the worst coach of the year. Come on, guys. Please.
I've been like a staunch Violet defender for so many years. Like always people are saying like, oh, Violet's so bad, he's such a feeder, blah blah blah. And like for so many years I've always been defending Violet, being like, no, you don't understand, like this guy, he's actually like so good. Like he actually has such a high impact in the game, and occasionally he'll feed, but like he's actually such a high impact player. Like he does more damage than everyone all the time. And it's like I'm starting to feel like the scales are tipping, you know. He's getting older and older and older, and like an Ajax map is not acceptable. It's actually out of this world how badly he's playing in this Asia tournament.
Can I speak from the heart on this one?
Do you ever not speak from the heart, Chris? You're always welcome to.
No, I mean, you're right. I think the problem with this category is in all of the Chris Cope sections mentioned above, I was right in all of them.
You know, like Punk was one of the better episodes in terms of popularity. People like talking about what Laurie was doing behind the scenes. Mightn't have had the same impact, you know, blowing up our relationship with the casters that Gunda had, painting us as just like overt racists like Gator did. But at the end of the day, like Punky was just well-rounded, and I think that works.
Which means we're on to the big one.
This is the
client of the year. So, hello everyone, welcome to episode 30 of Uncoachable. It's a special episode because not only is it Christmas, it is also our award show. So we're going to be running through a host of categories, a lot of ones you would expect, plus a few you maybe don't expect, and we'll pick the winners. We don't know who has won yet. We're going to debate it and figure out between us, and worst case, we could always resort to some kind of democracy. So what we're going to have for each category, we've got a list of nominees, and then we'll pick a winner. So we'll do a pretty easy category to kick us off so you can all understand the format for the Overwatch Podcast of the Year. Now, the nominees are Uncoachable. Good job, everyone. We got in our nominee. Korean Uncoachable. Also okay, very popular on Reddit. And Unknowable, the UK university one here. So, any strong opinions on which one we think had the best year?
I'd just like to confirm before we move on that I feel like we can all agree that we're not forgetting anything here in these categories, are we? Like,
these are unquestionably
big ones, right?
Best three.
The big three?
Right?
Yeah.
Top three.
100%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe
when we get to the sleeping assistant podcasts of the year, we can mention one or two other ones. But for now, for the Overwatch podcast, this is the big three. I think logically, the other two were based off us, you know? I think, even if it was unbiased, we would actually win this award 100%. If we're all here keeping it real, like this, we fucking nailed it, boys.
In the interest of keeping it real, I do feel like Chris might be onto something here.
Keeping it real, you know?
Yeah, I think as we go through all the different awards, it's really important we keep it real throughout the show. So I'm happy to keep it real at the beginning here as well.
I'll keep it real.
Okay, good. So seems pretty unanimous. We're all agreed. Uncoachable, Overwatch Podcast of the Year. Good job, everyone. Nice. Good job. Round of applause.
Oh, I like that. That's actually a solid animation, dude. Look at that.
Nice one, Alpha.
Nice. All right. So then, our next category, maybe a little bit more debate on this one. Tank of the Year. So our shortlist, it's actually quite a big shortlist. Junbin, Hanbin, Smurf, Someone, and Infected. I feel like I want to almost immediately rule out Infected for this. I feel like even though he had a very good year, Tank of the Year, it's too big a step up for him.
Okay, then at the same time, I want to kill Smurf at this moment. Because we went into this glazing Smurf so hard, and I think actually he's come out the year like hyper glazed. But I actually think his impact towards the success of Falcons has been pretty not significant, you know. I guess one common theme that's going to come up throughout like multiple of these like serious awards is like which team was the best team of the year, you know? Like Falcons ended on a high, but Raccoons started on a high and maybe middled on a high. So I think it can't be Infected. It probably can't be Smurf. I don't think it can't be Someone. So who does that leave us? Hanbin and Jumbin?
The two bins, yeah. I think we're going to run into this problem a lot with these awards. Is because Falcons have these situations like they have the same problem with their DPS where they just rotated them for half a year. when it comes to Hanbin and Smurf, they shared a certain amount of playtime, right? So I think Hanbin was great in stage 2 onwards when he actually got to play, but I feel like we saw a lot less of him in stage 1. Whereas Jumbin has been like super dominant first half of the year. And even to be fair, in Stockholm, I think there's a real, if you swap Jumbin and Hanbin, Falcons still smash Crazy Raccoon, you know? I think if anything, Jumbin was at least as good as any of the other Malgas at that event. So I think I'm actually leaning towards Jumbin.
Yeah. Is there any world where you still give someone a bit more, representation than what's being said here? I mean, it's like someone didn't come that good at, the first international event, like in Dallas, but like someone came second at EWC and then top 3 at the World Finals with like a Western MIC team compared to the other two, right? Like, I think that if you're looking like Asia only, you're looking, like purely on these like top level results. I feel like you probably give it to Jumbin above the rest because Jumbin, like he had this wrecking ball pick that was just like, better than everyone.
I think that's the difference actually.
For the entire year, like he just had one pocket pick that basically won them everything, but it didn't win things for them at the very, very, very end, right? At the very, very, very
but that's
end.
so like if you like, okay,
it's
here's the question.
Bias, right? Is going to be a big
this
problem.
Is actually
an
important question.
But across the whole duration, someone was pressing H to win.
No. Okay. Here's a question for you. Okay, do you think Stockholm is more important than Dallas? Because OWCS says it, but I think that's hypercap. Like they're the same. Like they're just 2 lands. Like I don't think either of them were more significant. Like finals, Worlds finals.
Is that what you're telling? Is that what you're telling your wife after the prize pool was 2.5 times the size at Stockholm, but you did better in Dallas? Like, can you give me a rundown on that? Like,
I told her Saudi's the only one that counts, darling. Don't worry about Stockholm. That's all that.
Because I'm pretty sure that, like, objectively, Stockholm is significantly more important than Dallas. Given the prize pool's way bigger, and it's at the end of the season. No?
Yeah, but we didn't know the prize pool was bigger till after the tournament, right? So, like,
we get to look back on this with the benefit of hindsight, mate. Like,
I'm not a hindsight coach. Maybe you are, mate, but not me.
But I think it's not about the size of the tournament; it's about the difficulty of the tournament, right? Esports World Cup was the most difficult tournament because it had so many more of the bigger teams there, right? Zeta Division were there. We had we had more teams from all the regions. Dallas and Stockholm were the same difficulty. It's just top teams from the same regions.
I think Stockholm and Dallas are the same, and EWC slightly above in terms of like importance and weight.
I don't think that EWC, it's right to say that EWC is more difficult. I think if the tournament was more difficult, Toronto wouldn't have come top 2. Like, it was just single elim. It was just more like lucky for them to come top 2. I think if it was a double elim bracket,
do you think Falcons would beat Toronto at EWC?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I actually think that's a hot take. That's a hot take.
Crazy Raccoon knocked Falcons out of the bracket, right? That was that who put them out?
I mean, Rush beat Falcons, so think about that for a second. They can't have been that good, mate.
I don't know. I feel like for sure it would have been a situation where if it was a double alien bracket, Toronto wouldn't have come top 2. Toronto got like really lucky with the way that the bracket fell out. That meant that they only had to like beat Fnatic to come top 2, no?
Zeta.
No, they did have to beat Zeta. They did have to beat Zeta, right? Yeah.
I think Toronto. I mean, I'm going to defend Toronto quite a bit in this award show actually, but I think they were top 2 in that event because I think Hero Bands they were pretty set up for it. I think they would have beaten Falcons. Maybe it's a hot take. Maybe.
Also going into that event, Zeta and Falcons were like pretty on parallel, right? In terms of strength, like even though Falcons qualified for both majors. It was like a 5 mapper both times, right? It quite easily could have gone the other way. So I think it's fair. Like Zeta and Falcon similar power levels, so I think it's not guaranteed they beat them, right? But it's really possible.
I mean, I do feel like Toronto, they went to 7 with Zeta, right? Is that correct? It was 7 in the end.
Yeah, that's true. That's a fact.
There's a fact, no feelings.
Fact.
When I was watching that series, it did feel like it was like 60% the fact that Sugar Free was just high diffing Flora on Tracer again and again and again. And I think like if you have that same matchup repeated with Falcons, like that's not the same situation, right? Like there's too much Tracer power on Falcons. Like if the biggest difference maker in that series was the fact that there was like a high Tracer diff between the Skipper and Sugar Free, like does that get repeated down the line? I feel like maybe not. Obviously there are like some different points of weakness, but
I think in that tournament too, Anna Alari was actually low-key really important. And I think on Anna Alari dive, Falcons were totally fucked. Like they were never beating Zeta or Toronto. So it's like maybe it's like meta related, but I think that like Chio would have been like low-key, high-key exposed a little bit at that event on certain bands.
Yeah, you might be on something with that one, on the low.
I might be spitting, but I don't know how this relates to Tank of the Year.
Well, I guess the question, I think like Max is probably right. Someone deserves to be like, I don't think he's Tank of the Year, but he's probably closer to it like than Smurf and Infected. Maybe like him and Hambin would be the closest, but I feel like I'm still jumping above all.
Yeah, I think
consistency
for me,
at every event, and then like some crazy highs as well at some key events.
Yeah, I think like both like Hambin and Jumbin played really well, but I think the fact that Jumbin had that one pick that just like terrorized every single fucking team, like every time he picked it, I think that like Hambin didn't have that. Like Hambin was just good at the heroes he was good at, whereas Jumbin was good at the meta heroes, but then just had that one low key, high key, like fucking outrageous bullshit. So yeah, I'm voting Jumbin too.
Yeah, give it to Jumbin.
All right.
Ball.
Congratulations, Jumbin. I'm sure you'll watch this, mate.
There's a reasonable chance that Korean Uncoachable, that's definitely not called Overwatch University, will see this and then do an awards episode as well, and then be like, no, this is original. This is award show 2. Just like a slightly different name.
with our overlay. They'll even use the same animation.
The same confetti, yeah.
Like you'll get a message from 9K being like, can I please have the assets that you use for your podcast?
I need the confetti, mate.
And then after they use the assets, Rush will say, no.
All right. And then we move on to most overrated team of the year. And the shortlist of nominees is Yeti / Fnatic, sort of grouping that entire core of roster together, Oblivion, and Peps.
It's actually hotly contested.
I feel like it's not Fnatic, right? Like Fnatic took out.
I think Fnatic was so shit, mate. I'll keep it real. I know they beat.
Didn't you lose to them?
Yeah, but I think they're so shit. No, I lost that series, but I came away from it like, fucking hell, they were bad, It doesn't really happen that often, but I like...
just that one cage.
I mean, that was the Zeta game, I think. Fnatic was just a unfortunate situation.
You were 2-1 up in that series, right?
Yeah, bygones be bygones. They were still shit, mate, okay? Just because we were shit doesn't mean they weren't shit, If beating SSG meant that you were good, then fucking everyone was good,
I think some of this we have to establish how much above their actual power level were they.
Okay.
And I feel like Fnatic and Yeti, when people were talking about them, because they had that one weekend where they beat Crazy Raccoon, nearly beat Zeta Division, nearly beat Falcon. So they went 1-3, but they nearly beat 2 of the teams and did beat 1 of the teams. And everyone blew them up as, wait till we see these guys at EWC, wait till we see them at EWC. And then we saw them at EWC, and they were a mile behind all these Korean teams that they once had a close game against once. So I feel like their power level was blown out of the water. Whereas with Peps and EXO, I feel like half the people overrating these teams were the people on these teams.
FD God. You're actually right for that, because people, if you quiz the general population before EDBC, they would have said Fnatic would have beaten every Western team, And actually, in reality, they would have lost to every Western team except SSG, And they were in the actual reality, they were nowhere near the top 3 or 4 teams. So I think it's Fnatic.
Yeah, I don't really have strong opinions about, these Kappa Euro teams, like Oblivion and Peps and stuff like that. It's I can't really say that I was disappointed by teams like this because my expectations were already in the floor. For Christ's sake, we're talking about a French team. I do feel like, the French were pretty good at disappointing at the end of the day. It was quite awesome the way that they were good at that. It was Tracer Echo comp, and then they just didn't even fucking play it at the end. And I wasn't actually that disappointed by Fnatic, the fact that they were able to go to EWC and take down Chrissy, who is fully convinced that they were dog shit. I think that's a more significant result than anything that Peps or EXO were able to cobble together. So I don't really want to give it to them. I think that
but it's overrated. It's not like the shittest team, right? It's overrated.
There was that period in Asia where it was like Donyak had like one game where he just went fucking sicko mode on Doomfist, and then everyone was just like, "This is the best team in the entire world." So I do feel like that is reasonable that they maybe got built up.
But that overrated them.
They got built too high. Yeah, they got built too high.
Overrated them. That, they were good for a week, and then they were shit for the rest of existence, and everyone had them down as like the top 4 team in EWC going into it. You know.
I mean, they knocked you out, Chrissy. They knocked you out. Like.
They didn't, mate. They literally. We went further than Fnatic at the EWC. That's a fact.
Didn't they get a higher placement?
Yes, Fnatic beat us in groups, but we still got out of the group, right? And then they lost to ENCE, whereas we went through. So we finished above them. They just beat us in one best of 5, 3-2.
Okay, all right.
They lost to Nightmare and VP, and the only game to get through groups was beating us 3-2.
You know what? You've convinced me. My feelings are starting to care about your facts. I'm voting Fnatic.
Nice.
All right, Fnatic, yeah.
Woo! Nice. Fucking, I love this animation, dude. Like, it never gets old.
Well, let's see. We got about 20 more categories. Okay.
We're only 2 deep, so
still time, mate.
All right. So the next one is about us. It's the guest of the year that we've had on the podcast. So it depends a little bit if we just want to extend the year a little bit, because we technically started the podcast
since
in
the beginning, you know?
2023. So if we include the whole thing, our shortlist is Gumba, Gator, and Punk. That's it. Obviously, Gumba and Gator both came on twice. Punk was a one-time wonder. So what's the important factors here in divvying them up?
Funny.
Yeah, I think Punk's episode was the best, but I think Punk was a good guest, but Punk low-key got carried by Laurie abusing him for a year, you know? Like, Punk, a lot of the Punk episode was the stories that he had to bring. Whereas I think I kind of like the Gumba episodes, you know? Like, Gumba didn't bring stories to the table. He just
made stories.
He just came in with like facts of racism, you know? And that's honestly all I care about in a guest. But also Gator made us. Let's keep this fucking real.
The episode 4, Gator, that was our breakout episode.
That was it. Without Gator flaming the Koreans and getting all virtue signaled on Twitter, we wouldn't be where we are today. So
I think Gator was the most value to us, like individually, and Gumba was, you know, incendiary, good for like a little bit of Reddit discussion, good for stoking the flames inside Chrissy's cold heart. But at the end of the day, I feel like the Punk episode, I think Punk was just like the best guest, hands down, you know? Like he was actually like 3 hours, just a pleasure to have on the podcast. Best episode we've had, I'd say. Like had quality stories to tell, funny throughout. Like wouldn't dance around any points, you know, like you'd get Gator on and sometimes they'd just be like, you know, him kind of like shirking responsibility or like avoiding, you know, Gator would just do the Gator thing, you know? It's like he would acknowledge that something was wrong, but he'd also be avoiding responsibility at the same time, you know? Punky, he just had nothing but quality for 3 hours straight. He was shooting straight, he had good stories to tell, and he was fucking funny. So I think that it was like the best episode that we could possibly have had. And honestly, like it did pretty well as well, you know? Like Punk was one of the better episodes in terms of popularity. People liked talking about what fucking Laurie was doing behind the scenes. Mightn't have had the same impact, you know, blowing up our relationship with the casters that Gumba had, painting us as just like overt racists like Gator did. But at the end of the day, like Punky was just well-rounded, and I think that works.
The problem with Punk, okay, the only counterplay to the Punk is if we had a Punk 2, would it have been as good, you know? Like Gator, was Gator 2
I don't think
good?
Gator 2 was okay, but it was just like
Gumba 2 was
episode.
good though, right? Gumba 1 and Gumba 2, there was like consistent quality there, I think.
Gumba's good for it, like across multiple episodes.
And I feel like
if we did a Gumba 3, it would be fun. Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
It would be the exact same level again.
Yeah, I think so. I think it has to go to one of the Aussies then. Even though Gator made us, I think you can't win this award. I'm voting Gumba. If we're doing democracy, I'm voting Gumba.
All right. I'm going to go Punk. I think it was, I think that episode was also more evergreen as well, because it was just like an Overwatch League one as well. So there's like,
was good. If you haven't watched that episode, you need to watch it, guys. It was absolute banger.
Punk wins.
Fair enough, Punk. Congratulations, mate. Cheers to you.
He's got a picture of Gumber up, cried.
There was a WWE moment there where just Gumber comes in, snatches the award of Punk at the end.
Dude.
All right. And then Hitscan of the year. So shortlist is Lip, no surprises there. Proper and Stalker, a similar situation with Falcons as on tank, and also Merit and Sparker.
It's actually maybe surely this is the least contested of the year, is it? Is Quartz? Should Quartz not be on the list somewhere?
Yeah, I thought Quartz.
We can add
maybe
Quartz,
belongs.
Yeah.
But even then, even if you add him, I'm not fucking picking.
The problem with Quartz is it's bookended, right? Good stage 1, good Stockholm. Everything else in between was a disaster. Not really Quartz's fault, really, but you can only judge what they put on the server.
I
mean, surely no one can justify anyone except Big Lippy, no? Like, real talk, keeping it one buck.
Yeah, I think real talk. It's just got to be Lip all the time.
Yeah. Maybe there'd be more of a contest if they didn't swap it halfway through the year, Falcons. You know, like Proper had 6 months on Hitscan, then Stalker had 6 months on Hitscan. Maybe there'd be more of a contest there, but Lip just good for it all the time.
Fucking Lip. Congratulations, mate.
Nice.
A shout out for the Uncoachable podcast. Oren Slayer has been on to me. Yes, Spino is the client of the week. Christopher found CommanderX's body in electrical. Unter is sus Chungus imposter. Shout out to all my quiz heads. You be harsh and sub to Uncoachable Pateron. Well, good luck, guys.
Flying through them then.
Yeah,
this one's actually we've only got 2 nominees for this one, but it's a pretty tight dogfight at the top. So this is for no comment of the year. The 2 nominees for no comment of the year are Seeker and Sam/Samsky.
Sinatra didn't make no comment of the year? That's a hot take, because he is the king of no comment of the year.
What did he do this year? Was it, mate?
Yeah, we can't rewrite history.
Did we take out racist of the year?
Yeah, this is for racist of the year.
Oh, this is racist of the year. We reskinned it.
Yeah, reskinned is the correct terminology, yeah.
Listen, there's a lot of awards, but I've been thinking about racist of the year probably the most, okay? And I think this is fucking easy, to be honest with you guys. Because if we said bank robber of the year, right? And there was 2 bank robbers, one who robbed the bank and got immediately arrested, and one who robbed the bank
away with it?
and just got away with it, you would always vote the second guy. So I think no comment of the year is clearly Seeker. Like, I, as an aspiring racist, I wish I could get away with 76 pages and it just wouldn't be a problem, you know? I couldn't do that, dude. I said it once, it would be over for me, but 76 million times. So I think he's a professional. He gets the job done and no consequences.
He gets out.
Yeah, that's it, mate. I think it has to be. I think Sam was weak sauce with his racism, you know? Like, he got caught, he went to jail, he had to like lay low for a while.
Do his time.
That's fucking poor.
Yeah, I think I've got no response to that. It's just,
that's facts, you know.
Would you go as far as to say no comment? Like,
I've actually got no comments to add to that.
Yeah, I'm also like heavily in the no comment camp right now. I do feel like Chrissy's logic is sound. I don't know if I would go as far as to describe myself as an aspiring racist, but I do think that Chrissy's logic is sound.
No aspirations. You're there, mate. You're locked in.
No comment, and we'll vote for Seeker.
There he is. This was the only award I thought about where it'd actually be good if we actually got an award made so we could hand it to him in person.
Okay.
I'll get right on that. I'll reinvest our funds. Then next up, we're going Best Western Player of the Year. And the nominees, Sugar Free, Infected, and Kevster.
That's quite a tough one, isn't it? Quite a toughie.
I think it's sugar free, to be honest.
I was just going to go sugar free as well. I feel like massive performance at EWC, been good all year. Obviously, a lot of Toronto's year has just been beating up North American teams, but I think he's got better as the year's gone on, and he probably just looks like quite easily, probably this year, best Western player.
It's like Kev just did shit, right? Like, did Ents do well at a single tournament?
Yeah, I guess like, the thing is,
was
for all these things, we're gonna just rate like international tournaments above all else, right? Obviously,
yeah.
And I think Kevin Ents didn't do anything at any of them, realistically. So yeah, I guess it has to be sugar free. Realistically speaking, shout out.
God, he won that award quick. Like, actually just stole it away in 20 seconds flat.
I don't think Infected was a reasonable nominee, but I just can't see how he achieved this year is close to what Sugar Free managed to achieve, you know? It's hard to justify.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right. Done. So then, instead of Coach of the Year, I've done Coaching Staff of the Year, because I think, as we all know, it's a little bit tricky sometimes to work out exactly who is responsible for what. So the nominees are Falcons, Crazy Raccoon, and Toronto Defiant. Sorry, you didn't make it, Chris.
Nah, I mean, it's pretty fair.
Neither did you for Maryville, Max. Sorry, mate.
No!
I think that's definitely fair.
So this one is...
Someone go first.
I mean, my feeling was like Toronto Defiant staff were probably like the best in bands, right? Like they went really far in EWC. They constructed a roster that was like actually good and flexible, and then it worked for bands. Everything just worked. My phone's ringing. Excuse me.
That was a good shout from Max.
Hello. Hello.
All right.
It's Casaurus, presumably.
I heard what you were saying about me. Would you like a job?
Slipping in a few
You might have the
dollars.
wrong number, brother.
Wrong number, brother? Fuck Casaurus.
Glendale,
Fuck
California,
off.
United States.
Fuck off, mate, okay?
All right, carry on. Yeah, so Toronto Defiant, they built like a really flexible roster, and then they actually utilized it properly with hero bands. They drafted well at EWC. They went all the way to grand finals. So I think that's like really, really high credit. They did badly in Dallas, but then they actually did really well again in Stockholm, which is objectively the more important tournament with the benefit of hindsight, something that Chrissy won't consider because he's not a hindsight coach and he doesn't want to tell his wife that he lost 2.5 times as much money at that tournament too, but that's okay.
What's most impressive about Stockholm is probably actually that they struggled on the Malga comp at Dallas, and then they came and they performed on a similar style of comp, and they were much better than they were, right? And there was clear improvement between the two events.
I might disagree with you there, to be honest. Like,
you don't think Toronto were a better Malga team in Stockholm than they were at...
yeah, I mean, I guess I agree with that, but Dallas. I also don't think their success was actually anything to do with Malga in Stockholm, though. Like,
I mean, they were able to beat, like, was it Nightmare in the Malga?
They didn't play Nightmare, really right?
Easy.
They played... Because who did they play?
They had an easy bracket run. They had Twisted Minds... NRG.
TM and NRG. And I feel like they only played Malgate on one map against Ents. And it was close, but they won. I feel like I guess like when we break down coaching, there's like 3 things that coaches do. You've got like the actual coaching, but that's really hard to judge from the outside. Like everyone knows you can't see the level of Overwatch. And that especially is true when you can't see the level of coaching within Overwatch, you know? Then you've got like, I guess what would be like the leadership inspiration shit. But that's even harder to see from the outside. Like, you have no idea who's giving the speeches and what effect it has. But one thing that we can judge from the outside is like the direction, right? Like the strategy behind it. And that's where I kind of lean towards Toronto, because I feel like for like bans and strategy in EWC, like Max said, I think they were really fucking solid. But I also think their strategy and bans and like maybe not bans, but like map picks at Stockholm were also really good. You know, like they won against the teams that like knocked out teams like me and Ents and like these fucking annoying cummy teams. They knocked out those teams by like drafting correctly and having like the right direction.
Counter comps and stuff like versus NRG as well.
And I feel like if you were to like assess Falcons coaching staff, it's clearly just coaching, right? In Brawl. That's what they were really good at. It's really hard for us to know, you know? And the same thing for Crazy Raccoons is clearly there was like some decent coaching going on there, but maybe they were just fucking insane players, you know? Like maybe like it's really hard to see like To be honest with you, I think with both Falcons and Crazy Raccoons, I think a lot of times they made pretty poor decisions with like map drafts and stuff. They just do, and like even the fucking players substitutions, they just fucking vibe that shit. But I feel somewhere either they were just too good or whatever it was. So I feel like from what we can judge from the outside, I actually feel like it's really hard to not give it to the documents, to be honest.
I'm leaning way more Falcons because I think I agree with Crazy Raccoon. I think there's this big sentiment about how they have this nice culture, good team environment, and they're all really good players and they just make it work, right? And even their biggest successes came with like a hog swap and a bull swap and the aura comp and all of this. Whereas with Falcons, I feel like when they had their success, it's a big brawl mirror, right? And once we get into these big brawl mirrors, I feel like that's when you actually see the chance for coaches to influence more. Because there's this evolving thing. And when I watched Falcons play, like when I watched all the replays from Stockholm, I was actually so convinced they make the same decisions every time, in the sense that like same situation, they do the same decision. They have the same set plays. They have smart theories for how to deal with this, and that they do better than any other team. So when it comes to that type of thing, that's when I feel like there's this massive coaching difference. Like you can still make these arguments that like Proper and Stalker did better than their DPS counterparts in Crazy Raccoon. I think this is also true, but the way Falcons played was also way above in terms of team decisions and where they're taking fights, how they're using their ultimates, you know? And I'm way more inclined to say that was a coaching decision or a coaching development rather than just if the players were deciding at the moment, it wouldn't happen so consistently every time they get in that situation, you know? There would be a lot more variety. So in terms of like actual level of Overwatch, I think Falcons achieved the most this year.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point.
Even if their bans and their player swaps, like Toronto were definitely better at that aspect of it, so there's maybe a bit of which one do you value higher out of these, but I think I'd be really inclined to give it to Falcons just because I felt like when it came down to it, they were able to play the best Overwatch in those situations.
I also feel somewhere, especially at the end, Falcons had such a much better roster for the meta too, you know? Like, even though the meta like favored them so hard that, and I feel like with both Falcons and Crazy Raccoons, I feel like they both won when on paper they should have won, you know? Whereas like somewhere, I mean, it's really like this is the thing that like when like other shows do this, it's so hard to judge. But I don't know, it feels somewhere that like when a team performs above what they should perform through strategy, that's where you give like the credit to the coaches. Because like I feel like on paper, Falcons should win in a double flex brawl mirror too. But also they have the best brawl coaches too. I don't know.
Also, even at Dallas, they were the better Malga team for sure, right? Like that was that grand final. The match that really screwed him with the Ilios, and when was it? Which was it? Suravas? No, it was the Oasis where they went hog, and then it was Ilios later in the series as well, right? And these maps really screwed them when they had the ball comp coming out, and they didn't have a solution for that. But in terms of like, I guess it depends how much you value like each style of thing, right? Well, because whenever Toronto were presented a problem, like NRG's Junker Queen problem. Clearly, Toronto's staff, they came in as like, this is the swaps we're going to do, these are the comps we're going to run. And it just worked. It just worked first time. I imagine
after
they had very limited
Dallas,
chance.
they fucked up. But the rest of it, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it's really difficult to pinpoint. You know, we discussed it ad nauseum, but it's like all those Falcons players, they're like the Rush players, right? Like not Rush the coach, but they are the Rush players. It's like, you know, this Dallas Fuel backline, which is just like super famous for the fact that they play all of these Rush comps extremely well. Proper, obviously, you know, really solid for this sort of stuff. It's like when Falcons are winning, it's like they're winning Asia playing the Rush comps that Field the Chio are famous for. Getting Harmon on these off tanks and these mirrors that he's really, really fucking known for and is constantly winning tournaments in the Overwatch League for. And it's like he was winning these tournaments under the coach Rush, winning them under Junkbuck and Krusty. I mean, it's just like it's the same thing, right? Like how much of that can you actually ascribe it to Falcons? And then like at what point did Falcons do something genius that made us think like, wow, this is actually so strategically solid, you know? Like maybe it is just plug and play with their roster.
I think it's Stockholm, yes.
I don't know,
like in the sense that they were good at the comp and played it everywhere. Like, what was the genius?
Well, yeah, but this is what's like difficult to pinpoint, right? Like the X's and O's of how to play the comp, but the overall strategy, all the Falcons coaches did was just play this comp and try to win, right?
It's like I just don't believe that it was the coaches because they fired the coaches after the tournament. Like that team got rid of their coaches after they won the World Finals, and those players, like basically every player on that roster, has a history of extremely good performance in a rush comp without those coaches, right? Like,
I guess you also have, because we had this same thing where like this is where Rush's reputation comes from, right? Because I think a lot of people said season 5, if you want to know how a comp is played, watch the Dallas VODs, right? See how Dallas play for comp, and this will be a great blueprint for it. So I think this really elevated Rush's reputation. But then we kind of saw it transpire, and actually, maybe a lot more of this is actually coming from the players than it is from Rush. But again, that's like an impossible thing, right? Yeah. Because I think Falcons at Stockholm did do things no other team did. Like, I think their like 10-0 fights were always better. I think fighting forward all the time was something they did way better than any other team, right? And to me, that feels like, at least from the outside, coaching decisions, right? To like make sure we're doing this every time, getting it right every time. I mean, you could still be right. We've seen it like happen before with this exact core of players.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it's just hard to read that. Like, there can literally just be like one player that is very on the ball with that sort of stuff and like pushes the buy-in, right? Like, you know, even with Toronto Defiant, like if you watch Toronto Defiant's style this year, you'd be like, oh wow, the coaches are so good at like making them consistently do this, that, and the other. But it's like, to an extent, obviously their draft was good, right? Like I think we should vote for the Toronto coaches as the winners of this category. But like, watch Florida Mayhem last year and the year before. It's like, this was Gumba's coaching. You know, this is an extension of Gumba's coaching and Gumba's style on this like Florida Mayhem core, getting transferred deeper and deeper down the line, because this was like Florida's bread and butter, right? The H key, aggressive forward fights all the time. But Toronto, like, they were actually transformative with that, right? Like, they continued to do that and were really, really solid in the draft and the bans. Like, they actually showed that at least one of the coaches on Toronto, I think, you know, Danny being like the analyst figure, I think that Danny's probably actually the person like unironically carrying all the draft stuff. Like, for sure, Casares will be like standing there thinking about what's happening in the game, and Danny will be like controlling the draft, basically controlling the draft, controlling the bans. And that is like very clear that they were actually good at that when you watch EWC. But for every other coach, it's like you can't pinpoint their impact. You can make an argument to say that
it's like a team intelligence, right?
Yeah, like, you can just argue that the players are the ones doing it, whereas it's actually objective that the coaches are doing it on Toronto, or that a coach minimum is doing it on Toronto. Whereas every other team, it's like, who was insane with their draft? Like,
I also think Max is right too, right? Like, if you were the most insane coaches, I feel like it's actually, why would you be gone a week after the season, you know? Like, I mean, I don't know. I have like my own theories about like Falcons and stuff, but I don't know. I actually think it's really hard to not give it to Toronto coach. Actually, I think the more I think about it,
I guess like in the same way, the initial choice was to make it a coaching staff of the year, right? Because it feels a bit, it's really hard to give it to an individual from any one of these coaching staff, because you don't really know who is doing what and who's having this without actually being there. I guess you can make the same argument when we talk about, like I thought Falcons had a really high level of play at Stockholm. And it's clear that somebody in a Falcons jersey or in a Falcons cap or something at some point has described these things and said it's important for them and that they want the team to do it every time. But it's impossible to know if it was Chio, if it was Krusty, if it was Junkbuck, if it was Majid, if it was Proper.
Probably
it could have been any of it. It was probably Majid. So we give it to Majid then? Or
Majid coaching,
But I think I can cop it then. I think I was the only one not on Toronto's side, right? So yeah, I can cop it actually. So Casares and Danny.
All the documents paid off.
You have a good idea? Write it down.
Cheers to that.
All right. So now we're going to hit the other end of the scale on this one for fraud of the year, or fraud coach of the year. So the nominees for this one are friend of a podcast, Capitology, other friend of a podcast, Rush, and of course, member of a podcast, Chris.
It can't be me, guys. I mean, we had one international event where we did best in the West, and we had two where we like didn't do that good, and we were the most winning team across Europe. There's no way that I am fraud of the year, guys. Fucking Fletter somehow is dodging this shit, him and Fate, after the worst map drafts in human history at the EWC. Rush, after making his team play the worst comps humanly possible. Capitology after doing literally nothing except doing a T sign one time. There's no way it's me, guys. I'm not coach of the year, but I'm not the worst coach of the year. Come on, guys. Please. You gotta agree.
But what's working against you is, I think, with Rush, he only got one event right.
Yeah, because
right? It was only once a game. But it means he's like,
they would have fired me if I was that shit.
We say for some of the other awards, it's hard when they split playtime because they don't play as much. Can they really be it, you know? So Rush shouldn't get the playtime, you know? He only had a weekend to be shit. You've had an entire year worth
of football. If you were doing the worst manager of the year, if I said to you, Ten Hag wasn't the worst manager because he got fired after 10 weeks, that's cooked because he got fired after 10 weeks.
Yeah, Rush didn't get fired. He didn't get fired.
Rush got 1 week on the one match on the headset. He got the headset taken after one fucking match. Every comp was like fucking nowhere near what their comp team should have been playing. I mean, I don't know. It's I would give it to Rush or the Fnatic coaches. Like, Capitology was just mid, but like we knew that, guys. Let's keep it really, you know. Like, was anyone surprised, you know?
I don't know.
I
feel like
with Capitology, to be honest. Like, I can't give that.
He's grown on me, 100% grown on me since the initial one, and now I think come a long way.
I think we just didn't understand Capitology's game. We didn't realize he was just funny. Like, I think he's actually quite funny, like, to be honest.
I agree. But he's a shit coach, right? Like,
I mean, who knows? Like, it's impossible. You can't tell the level of Overwatch from watching it. So, you know,
I mean, I can't.
Yeah. When I see those 5 timeless players, like, just giving a completely free retake, all on the same angle in the back of main, it's like, how do we know that that's Capitology's
could
fault?
It be Falcons?
It was could have been anyone's idea, yeah.
Yeah, genuinely. Could just be ice hitting, like, group up.
I don't know. I just feel Rush had one bad tournament, which I guess is 1 out of 1.
No,
so 100% of tournaments bad. 100%. Whereas yours is what? 2 out of 3 bad?
Yeah. But then what about all the EU ones too, right? Like I didn't mainly find in those. I think stage 4, I gotta get some credit, right? Like there was actually some genuine Chris theory behind that shit, you know? Like, I don't know. There's no way it's me. If Rush was so good, he would have gotten a job in Korea. That's a fact. It's Rush.
Yeah, I haven't actually like heard particularly good things about Rush like as a coach for the players. You know what I mean? Like I think reputation wise, like Westerners are like, this guy is the GOAT. You know, like look at all these players that he's been with. But it's like I'm pretty sure he's just like, you know, he's basically like Sparkle's dad. You know, like for as long, like he genuinely got in on the ground floor with Sparkle. Sparkle was like 14, got in as the Element Mystic coach when Sparkle was like the young up and comer, and then was just tied to Sparkle forever. And then when Dallas Fuel ended and Sparkle was finally not on a team, Rush doesn't have anywhere to go anymore, you know? Like he had that core for the longest time, for many years. But everyone said like back then, I think Rascal was the coach on Dallas Fuel when they won. Everyone said like, you know, Rascal really smart about the game. Rush, you know, he's just happy to be there. And then like after Dallas Fuel kind of falls apart, Rush is unemployed. And then we see Rush in the draft and Rush is shit in the sheets like crazy. But do I want to vote Rush as Fraud of the Year? Like, maybe I do on account of the fact that they stole our podcast format and we gave them permission to do it, but then he denied the fact that they did it after the fact. I feel like there's actually like levels of delusion to Rush that actually blow my mind. Like, they ask for our fucking assets for their podcast and then he publicly denies the fact that it's ripping it off. Like, what?
The first episode said Uncoachable on it. They didn't even like the Uncoachable. Yeah, to be fair, the more of those Reddit threads I read that are the translations of Korean Uncoachable, it only adds fuel to the fire to me that Rush is a fraud.
I mean, he is, man.
But I'm also conscious that Chris is incredibly biased in this situation, and he's trying to show responsibility of the fact that he's trying to point us in a different direction.
Mate,
you had a really bad year. You had a really disappointing year, right? A really disappointing year.
No, not that bad. Won more EU than anyone else, and got one of the 3 tournaments best of the West. You know, 3rd place, 8th place, 8th place. 1 8th place was pretty reasonable. 1 8th place was bottom place, and then one more EU than anyone else. Like, it wasn't that bad. Like, were you guys expecting SSG to sweep Europe everything? Like, against like TM and ENCE and all this? No way I'm fraud of the year, guys. Come on.
If you say no way enough, then the people will believe your reality. There is no way.
These guys. I did okay. Please. My future employer could be watching this, you know? His own best friends think he was fucking shit. No, guys. No.
He got voted for worst coach of the year on his own award show. Unemployable. The thing is, Chris's saving grace is I know deep down, despite the disappointing year, he's not actually a bad coach. Whereas with Rush, I've not got the same level of evidence, you know? I've not got the same level of things leading me to believe he's got it all going on up there. But I'm also conscious Chris is trying so hard to weasel his way out of this and deflect.
Chris had the roster that was famous for the style of comps. They had the coach that was famous for the style of comps. They came last at the tournament where their comp was meta. Like, we can't sleep on this, right? They had
the meta.
They genuinely created the meta, and then they came dead last at, you know,
no, seventh mate.
At least, yeah, 7/8.
We won a map.
It's actually you won a map and it did not. So I do think that, you know, we can't sleep on these results, right? We can't ignore the fact that Chrissy, he was handed the meta on a silver platter. It was their meta, and they failed. And that does kind of seem like something that a fraud would do, don't you think?
Oh, is there an argument here in all of this? The roster that Rush had at Esports World Cup, the once again team,
unwinnable roster, bro.
a bit overrated, right? They have really high peaks on one particular comp, which in theory would make them
didn't play that
really
comp,
bad,
bro.
really bad at the
play.
hero ban competition.
But he didn't play the comp. It wasn't about bans. He never played that shit. He just played fucking other shit. They just put Gushway on fucking Queen 24/7. Mate, come on, guys. You can't be serious right now.
The thing is, how well do you think that once again roster would have done at the Esports World Cup if we just replaced Rush and put like a coach who knew what the bans were? Would they have finished much differently?
Slightly better.
Like 1 or 2 placements, right?
Yeah, but you look at the decisions and it was all bad, you know? Which was my bad decision?
The results.
Yeah, I guess not yet. Not been able to get the results.
Yeah, but then we didn't vote like Falcons or Crazy Raccoons for Coach of the Year when they had the results, you know?
I think it's Chris. I think it's Chris. He's way too averse to the nomination here.
All right, I say Rush. Cheers.
I will probably be voting for Rush as well, just because the way that he played the bands was hysterical, and you know. That thing about the Korean Uncoachable, it kind of pushes me over the line, right? Like, there's just like I think this guy's got to be like really far separated from reality, like just like full fucking delusional, which that's fraudulent behavior in a way.
Yeah, deep down, I know Chris is a better coach than Rush as well. And let's if we run the hypothesis, right? What if we did coach swap and Chris went to the Esports World Cup
with the Chinese, mate.
Once again, we know what he thinks about China. How would Rush do? Let's pretend it's not a language barrier, but how well would Rush do with a year with SSG?
I mean, Rush won the Overwatch League in a Rush meta, so
maybe Rush
would actually be able to make some magic happen with Christopher's roster, right? Christopher gets a Rush meta for playoffs, he comes dead last. Rush gets a Rush meta for playoffs, he wins the league. So I'm actually starting to get a little bit more bearish on Rush once again. And that's bullish, actually. I think I'm bullish, not bearish. I gotta get Jake in here to confirm
You've been
this.
described as bearish before as well.
Potentially bearish, potentially bullish. Nobody, we're kind of a quantum state on Rush's coaching.
Kind of
I vote Rush.
Yeah.
I vote Rush. We've got to move on from the category.
All right.
Yeah, I'll accept it. Congratulations, Rush.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers, mate. Sparkle in the front. You can see that Sparkle has very clearly had plastic surgery now, by the way. See how his face looks differently shaped in that picture?
Yeah, we don't actually have an award for cosmetic surgery of the year, but we can maybe look at introducing it in the future.
If we had that category, it's just Sparkle, hands down.
Good on you, Sparkle. Get a new face.
Sparky. Money well spent.
And then, we've called this one Best Newcomer. It's essentially the same thing Rookie of the Year was in Overwatch League. So what we've tried to do here with this shortlist is not just people who haven't been in Overwatch League on this, but people who feel like new players or new talents that have emerged this year. So the shortlist is Infected, Scissors, Zera, Zodial, Rajaro, and Gala. No Koreans on the list, but I also couldn't think of a Korean that fitted in this category, right? Like some people say Proud because he wasn't in Overwatch League, but the guy's been around for forever on like good contenders teams in Korea, so it didn't feel the same way Quartz doesn't count, right? Like he's literally won a World Cup, doesn't count. I'll go on then.
I think that Infected, it's like if you wanted to go all like results based and clout based or whatever, like people would vote for Infected. But I don't think that Infected really belongs in this category, to be honest. He's like really young and he's a big up and comer and he's done very well this year, but he's actually been playing for years already, you know? Infected is like a super known player within the scene. You want to talk about that someone that is actually like a newcomer, a breakout player. I think that nobody comes close to Scissors. I think Scissors is actually really, really fucking good. For how long he's been competing, for like how unseriously he takes the game, I think that he is truly the newcomer of the year. Because Scissors has come out of basically nowhere, right? Like just an NA ranked player that is like a college student at a serious school, not like a collegiate Overwatch player, but someone that is actually just like going to university, taking life seriously, has a life. He's come out and then he's just going deep in the playoffs bracket in Stockholm out of nowhere. And I think that is more of like a newcomer of the year than being someone like Zodial and getting gassed up in a YouTube video, but then not actually having any meaningful results, not making any of the hard to qualify for lands. I think Scissors for sure, in my opinion.
Okay. I see your point. I don't think it's totally wrong, but I think it's still Infected because, like, I think if you compare to where like they were at the start of the year to where they are at the end of the year, I feel like Infected was like whatever at the start of the year. I feel like in this off season we're going into, I feel like he was like the number one, like most sought after player in NA, you know?
Yeah.
I think he went from like, oh yeah, he's pretty good. Like, because who did we have at the start of the year? Hawk was still playing.
It was Hawk Kaluge, even Dante was playing.
And it was like in the top, like whatever. I don't think Infected was necessarily at the top, but now, like, if you said to me you're building an NA roster, maybe you would like say like Vega or RuPaul, but Infected be right up there with like the first player you would try to pick. And I think actually like not just because he's the only tank, but I think he's seriously good.
I do.
Whereas I think like with the EU ones especially, I think none of them are anywhere close to the level that like Infected reach. I guess like I see your point in terms of like depending on who you are, you would have maybe not considered like Infected a newcomer. But
I think it depends on how you approach the category. You know, like if you want someone that's like really, really new, then it's Scissors. If you want someone that had like the biggest change between the start and the end of the year, in terms of like their importance in the scene, like it has to go to Infected. Like Infected really wound up as like the last man standing on tank. You know, at the beginning of the year, there was like nobody really having the conversation of like, is Infected this like hyperflex player that everybody wants on their team, right? Like he wasn't a desirable tank at all. He was like 4th rate pick. But by the end of the year, everybody above him quit, which I think is like not a good indication for Infected. You know, it's more like, because you're the last man standing, you're the best, right? Everybody above him quit. But at the same time, he also did massively improve and is actually like deserving of the spot. So I think it works both ways. For me, like I want to vote for Scissors just because of the fact that I think he's like actually a breakout player, like out of nowhere, right? Whereas even at the beginning of the year, like Infected was known for this stuff, right? Like Infected beat SF Shock on Wrecking Ball last year, right?
On the, what do you call them?
In the Pro-Am.
Yeah, I forget what the team was called, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So like, I think the fact that Infected, like even last year, you know, he was doing stuff like that. Like he had a little breakout moment, you know, beats Proper on Wrecking Wheel a full year prior. Whereas Scissors, it's like you go back a year, he didn't even exist.
I mean, that's like, it's not to get into leaks, but this is even going to be in a top 3 team next year.
No, I think he's fucked.
Yeah.
What do the things that you're talking about with Scissors, do they apply to Zero as well? How much of a known quantity is Zero at the start of the year, right? Because I also feel like Zero actually had a kind of similar trajectory as well.
You could be right there, actually.
A player I'd never really heard of to actually becoming one of the most established talents in terms of flex DPS in North America. And a lot of the same things we said about Tank at the start of the year. When we talked about flex DPS in North America at the start of the year, we were kind of just talking about Sugar Free, right?
Yeah.
It was like there was just a single player worthwhile, which is why Toronto dominated for so long. All the closest teams like M80, they all went Korean for their flex DPS. And now it feels like actually Zero is not as good as Sugar Free, but he's right around there, you know? Like he can compete for sure. So I feel like
there is
Zero
like that
and Scissors have
upwards
pretty
trajectory.
similar trajectories there in terms of obscurity to right up there. And I think if you had to ask me to pick one, I think I'd probably give Zero the nod over Scissors.
Fair enough. To be fair, actually, like, you know, there's I think that I was very high on Scissors on account of the fact that he was just sort of like super random, like relatively like low effort. You know, because he was actually doing stuff other than just sitting around playing Overwatch all year, and he still had really good results. And then like when it came to the international tournament at the end, like he actually did better than Zero. Like he went deeper into the bracket with his team, which I think is actually like super significant. But I think the problem that plagues him is the fact that because he is a human with a real life and attempting to get an education, you know, it can be difficult to compete for people that play the game 24 hours a day all the time. You know, people want to play with people that are grinding harder, stuff like that. So I think that's a little bit challenging for him. Are we going to wind up giving this to Infected at the end of the day rather than either of these flex DPS picks?
I think I'm voting Infected, to be fair. That's what I think I'm voting.
Yeah, I think because of like in the same way we would say someone like Proud or Tree is another player who just doesn't feel like they count at all, right? In terms of this, I feel like even though Infected had that one breakout performance against Shock, it felt like a flash in the pan for me. I don't know if I'm just like out of touch with contenders during that year of season 6, but it felt like it was a flash in the pan result compared to maybe someone like Quartz or something who just dominates contenders that entire year or something.
Yeah.
So I think the thing is, if Infected qualifies for this, he wins. That's like the only debatable bit. But I think for me, Infected qualifies.
All right. Yeah, it feels like your vote doesn't even matter.
Fuck.
Welcome to
I guess the only opinion that really matters here is Chrissy's, right? Like, that's how this works.
Cheers to that. That's what I like to hear. I might get another glass of wine to celebrate that news.
Yeah, I think you should get on that, mate.
Should I?
No, you do you, mate.
All right, you guys. I can keep listening, so you guys keep talking. I'll be back.
Okay. So next up, we're going to go for worst org of the year. So the shortlist for worst org of the year is M80, who had a rocky entry, a rocky road, and then quickly left. Bleed Esports, who have a pretty strong contention here by the fact that they just aren't a real business and scammed all their players and never paid anyone, so that's a strong entry. And X Oblivion for a litany of bad decisions. I don't know if I'll go on.
Oh, what don't you know? I want to know about the known unknowns before we move on.
I don't know if in some ways, while there were certain crimes on M80 and X Oblivion, on Bleed Esports, there was literal crimes. People were... the owners are in jail, and they didn't pay any of their players. So I don't know if that actually makes it just such an overwhelmingly strong entry. It just blows out any kind of bad management decision is blown out of the water by literal fraud.
Yeah. I think, you know, if you're talking about like relevance to the top level of the scene, then it's probably M80, right?
Yeah, I actually agree. I mean,
M80 was like a really serious org. They went to like multiple lands they went to North America and EWC, and I'm pretty sure they haven't paid their players at all. Like, I'm pretty sure they're also like quite hard scamming.
Yeah.
But if you want to go on like Aura, it's probably Bleed. Like, going to prison for it is like that's pretty awesome.
That's
right?
dedication.
That is actual, like, you're a pretty scummy org if your owners wind up in prison. So there's a chance for that too.
No, I think it's M80 because actually I didn't even consider M80 at the start, but you're right. They signed such a shit roster in terms of players who were basically tweeting, I fucking hate Overwatch, I fucking hate competing, I hate everything about this fucking game. They didn't do very well, and then they just like dropped. Like, I don't know.
They screwed McGravy as well, right? Like,
yeah.
Screwed McGravy, disaster entry into the scene, rubbed everyone the wrong way.
I
Signed a
forgot
team
about the McGravy thing.
Nobody really liked.
Unreal.
Yeah, like nobody really liked M80 at all. It felt like they never really seemed that interested in the game either. I mean, to be honest, I don't even know why they got involved. Like, I don't know what they were hoping for.
Club
EWC
points at
money?
EWC, my friend.
Were they one of the EWC teams in the end?
No, they didn't get in, but they thought they were going to. That's what I think it was. I think they signed a roster because they thought they were going to get in EWC, and then they didn't, and then they left. I think.
Oh well.
I mean, I'm not an expert, and I'm 7 wines deep, so cheers. I can't remember anything. I'm voting M80.
I think M80. There's the personal connection with M80.
I'm going to vote Bleed. Yeah, I feel like because theirs was the most serious crimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go with Bleed too, actually, because like M80, there's like a personal bias. Like I'm actually close to those people, but like Bleed, like I can't just discount what they've done. So we'll give it to Bleed. Yeah,
I think it's fair to say if you made the shortlist for worst org of the year, is pretty bad to begin with.
we didn't even talk about what was bad about EXO. Like we don't even care.
I mean, EXO, I don't even consider them an org.
Well, yeah, actually, the biggest problem with EXO in many ways are the most contentious one here because you have to establish, much like we had to establish if Infected was a newcomer, we have to establish if we actually treat Ex Oblivion as a real fucking organization. Which
I'm not, mate.
I don't know. Ran out of a bedroom. Do they have a business address? Do they fuck? They don't have anything. No money. It's just a fucking Twitter account. Too much time on their hands.
All right, cheers to Bleed Esports then. Keep it real.
Cheers, Bleed.
We'll send that one up to the prison. Then next is biggest int of the year. So this is going to be quite a wide-reaching category. So we have some maybe obvious ones. Violet's Runa Sapi beat comes to mind. That one feels like it's sort of ingrained in everyone's heads. We've got Rush's drafts at Esports World Cup. Now we've already talked about here. Toronto not picking Ilios against Ents, which was one, obviously we put Kasaurus on blast for he had a certain amount of cope. And this is probably actually going to be my pick. UB inting his friendship with KSA. Because I feel like that led to such a downward turn for Twisted Minds for such a long part of the year.
It's actually a good shout.
It just, because they won stage 1. Like, maybe they weren't expected to win stage 1 and they kind of clutched it out in the final against Ents, etc. Change for comp, change for maps, blah, blah, blah. But that team went from winning the World Cup, winning stage 1, looking like if the meta was right for them, if it was Brawl, they were almost unbeatable. Well, they were always in like what had to be the favourites for the event. And then since KSA left, Twisted Minds, that roster, the org have just been on like such a downward trajectory. They got a bit of, I guess, like redemption at Stockholm, but even then that feels almost a bit, I don't want to say fortuitous, but things just lined up, right? They said, fuck it. Well, our 2 best players are going to play 2 of their best heroes. And it kind of worked out, but that's a long time between stage 1 and Stockholm.
What were the nominations, sorry, other than this? Other than the
Russia's drafts at the Esports World Cup.
Yeah.
Good shout.
Toronto not picking Ilios versus Ents. And Violet's Runa Sapi beat.
The Toronto one, when was this Dallas they didn't pick Ilios?
Yeah.
Because I swear down, Danny was in my fucking DMs defending this shit. Did Cass come on the show and defend
we talked to Kasaurus about it.
It's because they didn't want to play Tracer Echo or something, right?
Yeah, but okay.
But they could have just played Dive.
Yeah, but even now they know it's fucking cope. Because at Stockholm they would have picked Ilios for sure, right? Because they picked it against every team. So we were right. We were fucking right from day one about that shit. I mean, you know how I feel about Ilios. But I'm giving it to Toronto for that shit. Fuck those guys. They could have won easily.
Yeah, but I also feel across the course of the year, there's been enough examples of it being fine as well. In fact, being a strength for them. Whereas I feel like this set Twisted Minds back so far to a point they never really recovered from.
I mean, that's why it was an int, because they could have... I think if you gave Toronto coaches the strategy that they used for the last tournament of the year against Ents, ironically, and put it in the Dallas, they would beat them, They would beat them, because I swear there was like Dorado or Gibraltar or some shit in that map pool too, Like, I swear there was some sort of fucking really, like, AIDS escort map that they just dodged because they thought they could play the mirrors everywhere. But, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Like, maybe TM literally went from being like the best team in Europe to just like a fucking Mickey Mouse team for like 9 months.
And then they did the best out of any team internationally.
Maybe Yubi knew what he was doing all along.
I don't think that there's like, we can talk about that being the biggest
like
end of the year.
redemption.
It's like, what was the consequence for them? I guess the consequence is that they wound up stuck with they wound up stuck with TBNT at the end of the year.
Yeah, and
like,
presumably if they
KSA
kept
would've done
KSA,
better.
they would have done equally as good.
They would have beaten Toronto if they had KSA instead of TBNT. To be honest.
And maybe they would have done better, way better in the actual OWCS 2, 3, 4. You know.
Yeah, but I reckon if they had KSA, they wouldn't have ever had UB sitting on the bench. You know what I mean? Like so things just would have gone differently. You know, like
it would have been like a completely different timeline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I feel like it probably is a better timeline than a Kai on Torb at a major.
I mean, I could see that. Maybe we could just give it a rush anyway. Just fucking let him two times.
Fill up his trophy cabinet for him. It's been a while since 2022.
Yeah, I'm kind of on board with just like piling on Rush. You know, I don't have like strong feelings.
I mean, I'll never say no, mate. I'll never say no.
I think it is kind of cool, like Violet to Ajax. To be honest, like now that I'm watching this Asia tournament, I feel like Violet has actually hit the wall. I've been like a staunch Violet defender for so many years. Like always, people are saying like, "Oh, Violet's so fucking bad. He's such a feeder, blah blah blah." And like for so many years, I've always been defending Violet, being like, "No, you don't understand. Like this guy, he's actually like so good. Like he actually has such a high impact in the game, and occasionally he'll feed, but like he's actually such a high impact player. Like he does more damage than everyone all the time." And it's like I'm starting to feel like the scales are tipping. You know, he's getting older and older and older, and like an Ajax map is not acceptable. Like, holy fuck. It's actually out of this world how badly he's playing in this Asia tournament. And he's just straight faced too.
And also, no other Lucio is doing it, right? At least previously, we'd always have like, oh, every Lucio's a bit of a feeder at times, right? And it's like just, it happens.
It's just him.
It's only him at this tournament. I feel like we might have finally reached like the breaking point. Because there are even times this year, do you remember when he would swap Kiri sometimes if his team was just losing? And then he would just be horrendous on Kiri. He would just have a billion deaths or something. So I feel like he's really past his prime. And I don't know, Nat Beat was one of the like more egregious ones. But to be fair, the only thing that puts me against Nat Beat is Nat Beat was something like 4 minutes into the map, right? So it doesn't really feel like, is it that game?
I don't think it was the biggest into
4 minutes into a push, right?
Yeah,
like it's iconic, right? It's iconic, but I don't think it was actually the be all and end all of that map.
Yeah, Rush trolled the draft. Like Rush trolled an entire draft like multiple times, right? So I think that Rush is more deserving than Violet pressing Q. Like,
yeah, I actually think it's when I think about it, it's Rush or UB, you know, because Rush entered an entire tournament of his drafts, but maybe UB entered like
what, 3/4 of the year?
Yeah. If they just kept that bridge built.
I think UB might be better off as a result long term, and UB's team did well at the end of the year when it mattered, so I'm going to give it to Rush.
Fuck it. You've convinced me.
Yeah. Rush. We'll give it to him. All right,
Rush.
2 awards already for Rush in this.
I will say, by the way, Fleta and Fate have dodged a fucking bullet because their draft was equally bad, if not fucking worse than Rush's. Like, their drafting was fucking awful, but congratulations, Rush, mate.
Okay, and then Flex Support of the Year. So the shortlist, a lot of the obvious names, really. Shu, Fielder, RuPaul, and Finn. I feel like the easiest one to chalk off here is Finn, just because he only got to 1 out of 3 major tournament, right? So that feels like
I feel like there's no way he can win it.
But yeah.
But I actually think if there was like did we do a most improved of the year? No, right?
Let's see what's on the list.
If we did
Finn
one,
was the most improved?
I think Finn would actually be really high up there. Because actually, I think when I heard, I think Finn had such an awful last year of Overwatch League. I thought he was so mid. I actually think this season he's been pretty fucking solid throughout, you know? I think especially the first half of the season, I think he was really fucking good.
The backline,
he definitely can't win this award, but I think actually I turned into he surprised me more than a lot of players, I think.
I think performance-wise, you're right, in terms of like if you were to say who are like the best 4 flex supports, just in terms of like talent and ability. But the problem is like the other 3 people on the list, they've also got a load of talent and ability, and their list of achievements this year is just better than Zeta's.
I also think you just don't get to be the most improved player if you're 3 years into your tier 1 career, to be honest. Like, he had a good first year. Like, he had a bad second.
Good
first
year.
I mean,
it's best recovery.
Yeah.
I guess the real argument here, because I feel like RuPaul just ends up maybe falling short to both, potentially. and it just becomes between Fielder and Shu. I feel like there's an element of recency bias that I'm trying to fight against, but I feel like in my head, if it's not Shu on Ana, I think he's actually not better than Fielder on almost. Is there any other hero he's better than Fielder on?
You're actually right, I think. You're actually right.
There has been a lot of Ana played this year, and Shu has had, even today, or I guess yesterday for you, Max, when we watched the Soup Cup, Shu went Ana, and he hit some unbelievable clutches again. He did this more than any other player this year. The most clutch player by the year by far. It was always on Ana, and he's such a big impact for his team on it. But I think Fielder's actually better at every other hero than him, or every other relevant hero.
I'm always back and forth with this Shu versus Fielder debate, you know? I'm a big Shu defender. When Shu wins with what he's doing, it's like he's the best player in the universe.
Yeah.
When his team loses in Rush Mirrors, though, I feel like he's actually a pretty big part of it, you know? He gets caught out more than Fielder, 100%. His ults get kited more than even people like Finn. So I think that, you know, Shu has the highest level of skill expression in the world on that role, and Shu is the most valuable player anytime he can play Honor and anytime he can make his high-level skill work. But Shu has some issues that Fielder just doesn't have anywhere, you know? Fielder just doesn't get picked, and Shu definitely gets picked when he's not on Honor. Shu plays Juno, Shu plays Kiri. You get into these rushy mirrors, and he can sometimes be a problem. And I think that... it was more of a DPS diff than anything in Stockholm, so maybe it is fair to just give it to Shu regardless. First half of the year,
I think it was a backline difference, you know. Obviously, that was
but I think
they were different. They were different roles in Stockholm as well, right? Because Chio was
Stalker was the
big.
I think Stalker was the biggest gap, dude. Stalker was the biggest gap.
I think it was a backline diff, but I also think if you look at Dallas and EWC, you'd also say the biggest difference between those teams is the backline too. You know, I remember coming in from EWC and thinking, I guess Falcons, they did play Crazy Recruits, but they played them early. But I came away from it, especially in hero bands, thinking, for sure it's actually the backline which is the difference. So I actually think it has to be Shu. But even though I agree with you, I agree.
At EWC, is it not Charong's flexibility that gave him that gave Crazy Raccoon the advantage? It was like a Charong Chio difference more than it was, because it's not like Fielder's a problem in hero bands, right? Is it? It's oh no, we don't have anything to put Fielder on.
Shu's a difference maker, you know, in his role.
But I think Fielder is in every situation except when it's an Ana mirror against Shu, right?
Fuck, I don't know. It's actually really fucking close. I think it's Shu. I think it is Shu. Because I remember saying the biggest difference between those teams for the first half of the year is Shu over Fielder. Just because he Shu is hard MVP so many. It's the same thing with Jumbin, you know, Jumbin, hard MVP certain maps when he gets to play ball. I feel like Shu, hard MVPs. But I mean, I also see your point. I really see your point. But I'm going Shu. Sorry guys, I'm going Shu.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Shu because I don't really like Fielder on a personal level. So
yeah, I feel like there is something, you know, when you say if you always lose a map 5, or if you're the team that always loses for map 5, you know, like a Pep situation, right? As soon as it comes to for that clutch situation, they're always going to lose because ultimately the better players win in those situations more often, right? And Shu actually wins in those situations maybe more often than anyone on the planet, really. So maybe it is just Shu. Yeah.
Classic. Get that man a 50k MVP award right now.
You earned it, man.
Full disclosure, none of these awards come with 50k. None of them come with any monetary prize.
Unless
otherwise Russia's robbed us blank.
If you subscribe to our Patreon in masses, we'll pay 50k to each winner.
Okay. Then most overrated player of the year. So we're going to have to sort of do some figuring out of if we think these players, how highly they are rated in reality as well. So quite a big list for this one because I think there's it's quite debatable. We have Max, Viper, Irony, Chase, as in Chase Torch, PGE, and Smurf.
Okay, I think So if you talk about overrated in terms of like all time or whatever, but I think if we only look at this year, I think Smurf is actually, even though I start the season by
you inflating him.
I think Smurf has been massively rated. I think he's actually been like pretty underwhelming most of the time in comparison. I think he lost a lot of his dive maps. I think he was benched for most of their success. And I think the constant, like, he's the GOAT because he won this tournament. I think he is someone, especially right now in the recency bias, that is getting for his all-time contributions. I'm happy to say he's the best tank of all time. I think is really fair. But if we're only talking this year, we're only talking the last season. He might have been like the overrated by maybe anyone else on the list. I think by me. Cheers.
I mean, Chris's opinion is the only one that matters. So, I mean, I feel like we have to concur in that regard, right? Like, it's impossible to disagree. If he's going to say, that's his stance, it has to be everybody's stance. Chris is known for being right in these matters. I do think that, Smurf is relatively overrated, for sure. He's relatively overrated, for sure.
Like, I think, here's this one. If Smurf wasn't retiring, do you think Falcons would replace him? Because I actually think they would.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. Like, it's a situation where he probably is, like, the greatest tank of all time, but he probably also isn't a top 5 tank this year.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyone else on the list? I feel like Viper's a player who got really hyped up. I do feel he's, like, high talent. He is high talent, but he's also not achieved anything, really. Like, just he has, like, the pop-off maps, which I think generate all this high rating, but is yet to actually put it into practice in any kind of... I mean, maybe ironically, the Soup Cup is maybe where he's actually had his most consistent success. Yeah. But that was also, like, literally within the last 2 days. So I feel like he was part of a reason, I think, like... Because I also remember when Fnatic were getting a lot of their overrating, people were talking about Viper. And didn't Viper come in, play one map at Esports World Cup, then just get perma-benched into Fired?
That sounds actually incredibly accurate and
which is a red flag, I feel like, right? He's clearly a good player, but I feel like he got so much gas without really justifying it other than a couple of pop-off maps.
Reasonable. I don't know, man. Like, there's actually so many fucking incredibly overrated players. Like, there's such a ridiculous number of overrated players. I think it's also like, producer has the producer has chipped in. I think that it's actually super reasonable to say that Smurf shouldn't be the overrated player of the year, because it's like Smurf is in like the twilight years of his career, right? It's like the same thing as people like, I know the American Tornado players would always say that like Fletter was this incredibly overrated player, and I just didn't think that was true at all. They were just looking at a player who'd like had many years of really, really, really high level performances, and then he's like at retirement age and not performing as well and is shit then, like you're no longer overrated at that point. Your career's just over, right? Like, do you say that the GOAT is overrated when they get old and suck? Like, I don't think that's true. But
for this year, so I guess like
you're talking about looking at the year in a vacuum, right? I think that like everything that's not really. I don't like doing that because everyone has a downfall at some point.
So maybe like I don't know, maybe I don't have my finger on the old pulse as much as I should. I feel like people have been like, especially in the last like I guess like last month, been sucking Smurf off like big time for like how well he's played, But maybe that's also true. Like throughout the year, maybe Smurf got his fair share of shit. I just remember seeing like so many posts recently of like, Smurf is the GOAT.
Is it not just it's because he's retiring though, isn't it? So there's a big sentiment, and I think that's also fair as well, right? Like a player who's been around for so long and done so much, there should be like a certain amount of like send off for it. I feel like, do any of the others come close? I feel like I kind of feel this way about Max. But I think he is a good player, but I also just think like if Max never existed, it doesn't change a single result for Crazy Raccoon this year, So I don't think you can hold Max in the same breath as any of the other individuals we're going to talk about from Crazy Raccoon.
I also don't think Max came into the year overrated at all, because he came into the 23. Yeah, exactly.
What about...
I think looking at it objectively, it has to be Smurf. Because coming into the year, especially on the best podcast of the year, we were having Smurf as the best tank in the world, and he didn't do that.
Like the best signing.
From where we rated him to where he was, he has to have been the most overrated.
Yeah, I can play that actually.
Yeah.
Because all the others,
nobody else was like comically overrated throughout the year is the thing. Like, because I don't know. Nobody was getting gassed that hard.
Even for ones like PGE, I feel like there's a big difference between like the PGE heads will overrate him, but that's just like fans of a streamer overrating a streamer, right?
They say it, you know?
Yeah, like I don't think it's I don't think there's like enough people who are like actually die on that hill.
Yeah, I think all the people that would vote for PGE is like the best. They just have AIDS, you know, like they just have cancer. They're just like 16-year-old fans of him. There's like, cancer AIDS, exactly right. Combo. Children with cancer AIDS. So cheers to that. So yeah, I do think if you want to talk more seriously, maybe it is just Smurf because everyone else is like nobody was saying Max is the GOAT. Like Max, he lost his GOAT status in 23. His card got rejected, and I feel like the conversations around Viper, like they weren't big enough. Smurf's the only one where it's like people would consistently be like, you know, long historic player, and as always, Chris is right. Look at him fucking grinning to himself, you know. That's good, man. He says in his head, you know, it's like he just fucking hit a winner.
That's good.
That's good. Let's go.
I played tennis today against someone from the club. I got actually fucking destroyed. It was actually so bad today. I got humbled for the first time today. So I'm staying humble. Anyway, let's move on.
I'm staying humble.
Did you do that on purpose? Because our next award is for Humble Pie Award. That was actually in the list.
I mean, that's not even
he's just always right, is he? Jesus.
That's good.
God. So the Humble Pie Award shortlist is Ex-Oblivion, Peps, and all of EMEA, maybe all of the West, really. We can wrap it all together before Dallas. So obviously, Humble Pie, I guess maybe there's going to lose some of the people for the non-native English speakers as much. It's basically for people who have maybe a lot of confidence in something, but are basically made to eat their own words, to have to retract their opinion because they're proven so aggressively wrong. So maybe the clearest example is right before Dallas, where all the Western teams were saying, yeah, we can beat Korea. On our day, we can beat Korea. We'll definitely take maps off them. Proceeding to not take any maps off them at Dallas at all, which was a very so now it's like a classic example of a humble pie being eaten by the West on that occasion. And then obviously EXO and Peps, kind of similar stories again, where they really like to gas themselves up just to be embarrassed when it really mattered.
I feel like this is what I think. I think I was obviously involved in basically all of these. In one way or the other, I was involved in everything, yeah. I think it wasn't Peps, because I think Peps, it was just FD God barking after one win in a meaningless situation where he, like, FD God ate his humble pie within like a week, right? Like, it was almost immediately pied. I think EXO were, like, consistently, like, they had a good season.
They ate a lot of pies.
They did like tons of like this bullshit with the Migos. I think they constantly tweeted and put themselves as a way bigger and better than they were. So obviously, I'm not voting for the West because that was basically mostly me. I'm voting for Ex-Oblivion.
There is an argument here that, I mean, I'm not a big fan of EXO, so I don't need much encouragement. But it was just, they were just continuously gassing themselves up, saying they were doing these things. And the entirety of the time, again, just a bedroom org. No one's employed. There's no money. None of these like new investors or whatever have actually brought anything or done anything to actually turn it. You know, EXO at the start of the year had no money. EXO at the end of the year had no money. Is this an organization? What business starts with zero money, makes zero money during the year, and ends on zero money? Not
charities.
Charities, yeah. So, but the West one was more dramatic and played out in front of everyone, you know?
Nah, mate. The West, Toronto, we beat a few Korean teams. We did it. The West got top two.
Really stretching the definition of Weaver.
Me and Casaurus together. I'm voting Exo. Cheers to that.
Yeah, I think it's got to be Exo. To be honest, that was just like unreal. The stance
it was a
into the
litany.
absolute abject failure, like just next level. So for sure,
Because they were totally irrelevant after that moment, you know.
Yeah, it was like they literally stood at the edge of the cliff to shout that, and then jumped off and landed headfirst. So fucking awesome.
Can't believe they bought Mag a fucking plane ticket. Jesus Christ.
Money well spent.
Exo, congratulations.
Only thing they've won all year. Fuck. Then, main support of the year. So, shortlist is Chirong, Chio, Violet, who maybe won't be winning us after previous conversations, Funny Astro, and Vega.
Okay, it can only be between two, but I think even then it can only be one, right?
I think
it can only be Choron. Like Vega, I think is actually like second in my opinion, more than Chio. I would put Vega above Chio this season, but I think Choron is clearly the best, right?
Yeah, I agree with that ranking. To be honest, I think that like Chorong has the flexibility that Chio does not. Chio won at the end, but Chorong has more flexibility. So I think Chorong is just that guy in terms of main support. And I would also put Vega above Chio as well for that same reason. I think that the flexibility was like extremely rewarding at EWC, and like good upwards trajectory for Vega overall. Like came into the year, everyone talking very, very negatively about him. Came to the end of the year, and very, very solid results. Like ridiculously solid results for somebody that everybody said would be the problem. But in reality, you come into EWC and he was more of the solution. But Chorong just rock solid across all. Didn't win it all, but second will do. Won pretty much everything else. So
yeah, I think with Chio, it's very similar to what we've talked about a lot for Falcons, right? Just really bad start to the year, but the end was really good, right? End was really good. Looked like one of the more competent Junos, but I think really hard to argue against Chorong. All right, an easy one. There he is. He'll be excited about this one, I can tell.
He'll be fucking buzzing, mate. I promise you that.
Then, content creator of the year. And the shortlist is Tomathan, OC, and OBS Sojourn.
OBS Sojourn, hands down.
No, I think I'm enough wines deep. I think, without burning any bridges, OBS Sojourn is like low-key the overrated content creator of the year. Actually, the content she puts out is pretty fucking useful, but it also is just like scripting POVs and editing it and uploading, Whereas I actually feel Tomathan is the only like Overwatch content creator where I actually quite look forward to his content. It's actually really fucking funny. And he actually adds a lot to it. And he also works hard. Like he actually fucking like grinds all of the VODs to do it. And I don't think he necessarily gets the love and attention. So I think actually Tomathan is the breakout and the content creator of the year.
Yeah, I think like very much same boat as Chris in that like my slop sessions for my stream have been so hard carried by Tomathan, like all the time. Tomathan, his videos are so long and so detailed. I watch his YouTube stream all the time when I'm just like bored. Like I'll just put up the YouTube stream and he'll just be like going through VODs, chatting to the chat, talking to the chat, preparing for the next video, going through every single match, watching through fights, recording bits and pieces for highlights. And then after he's watched through every single match, every single time, he makes a really high quality video at the end of it that is extremely entertaining and is a really good showcase on a bunch of different players. So I think overall, like Tomathan is head and shoulders above any other content creator in the pro scene right now because he covers such a wide range. And I think that his videos are just fucking really fun to watch. Like I think there's points for OC and for OBS Sojourn in different ways, right? Like OC, they make very good accessible videos and people love them. They've like blown up through TikTok and they make super accessible videos that lots of people like, but it's not for me because it's like not, I don't want to watch like analytical Overwatch content at all. And if I want to watch analytical Overwatch content, I want to watch like an Overwatch League coach doing it. I want to watch like someone real like heavy hitter, like top 3 coach in the tournament doing it. So I don't want to watch like casual analysis. Basically, I don't even want to watch what Chrissy has to say. To be perfectly honest with you, But yeah, and then
You'll get it
OBS
next
Surgeon,
year, mate.
yeah, OBS Surgeon, there's like, I don't feel like a lot of entertainment value to like the content that they provide. You know, I think that it's like more, it's like an archive.
It's a resource.
You know,
it's like
yeah,
it's a really
resource.
valuable resource. It's just I feel kind of similarly. I don't feel like it's content in quite the same way in terms of creating like an original project. Whereas like when I watch Tomathan's videos, especially, they're so tightly packed. Like some of them are like 40 minutes, an hour long, and he's not padding for any of this. It's like a tightly scripted hour-long thing. And so there's just got to be, I don't know how many. Like, I don't know how he does it or like how much it is off the cuff and how much it is fully scripted, but it's like, it's actually honestly, a really incredible writing. Like, if we had a writer of the year.
Yeah, like Unter says, he actually does so much fucking prep work for these videos.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's actually such a waste of time for the return he actually gets, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's absolute nonsense what he's doing for 100,000 views on YouTube. But, you know, you can't do that with with like OBS Surgeon's workflow, right? Like you can't watch a stream of OBS Surgeon preparing her content because I think it is just like a script running through all of the VODs and recording it and then cutting it up and then uploading it. But there's no transformative element to that part, right? There's no commentary, there's no analysis. It's just the VOD itself, which is an incredibly good resource, but it's sort of a different category of content creation to what Tomathan and OC are doing. For me personally, OC's stuff is just like it's not for me, right? Like, but I definitely think that it's really good content because lots and lots of people watch it. Anytime I open those videos and I look at the comments, it's like I don't really enjoy watching it. I don't watch the videos. I've watched a couple on stream to be like, you know, what's it all about? But like the comments are always not just super positive, but they're always saying like, I'm a new viewer to the scene. I'm someone that didn't watch pro before and now I do. And I think that's where OC is like the biggest difference maker out of all of these content creators is that OC actually pulls in viewers that don't watch pro. OC puts people watching OWCS that were never going to watch it otherwise. And I'm not sure that even Tomathan does that. So I really do think that like there's huge value in what OC is doing. But I just prefer, I'll vote for Tomathan because I like Tomathan's videos personally. Like I watch them all on stream.
Same.
All right. Tomathan sweet.
He's not on this table.
Ironically, you can actually just use that exact same thumbnail for a video from Soup Cup from today as well. God bless you, Violet. Okay. Then best match of the year. So we're gonna have to rack our memory banks for this one. So best match of the year. First nominee is Crazy Raccoon versus Falcons from the Dallas Grand Finals, which was the Malga Genji Venture. This is where Jumbin played Hog, played Bull. Then the second nominee is actually Crazy Raccoon versus Falcons again, the Stage 2 Asia playoffs. This was the Orisa Genji mirror. Then Toronto Defiant versus Zeta Division, the Esports World Cup semi-finals. This was the hero ban, so we saw a whole variety of back and forth. The Fnatic versus Nightmare group stage game from the Esports World Cup. This is the 5-mapper where Infected, the West finally beat Korea on Dive, and this was like, I think, a big defining factor in a lot of those Nightmare players sort of come up through the year. And then the final nominee is Twisted Minds versus Pro from the Stage 4 playoffs, which was the game everyone thought was to qualify for Stockholm, but wasn't really.
Can I add one more?
Yeah, you can.
I think it's what I actually think I'm going to vote for is VP versus SR Peak Check in that same tournament. Because actually that was so fun, actually. It wasn't for the stakes or there was no quality, but that was so fucking fun. Because like the comps and everything, but also like the awareness of what the VP players were going through in that moment of like, these fuckers are going to ruin my life. I think that was actually the most fun I had watching Overwatch this year. But obviously I'm like EU biased. I guess we need to. It depends
what's the
on
important things? Right. Is it pure entertainment? Because there's part of me that wants to rule out Twisted Minds versus Pro and your nominee of versus Pro SR Peak Check just because the stakes weren't high enough. I feel like the best game of the year, the stakes need to be high. It doesn't need to be a grand final necessarily, but it needs to be an elimination game, I think, almost for sure, or a qualification game, some kind of big stakes. And then the game itself has to be super interesting and back and forth and evenly matched and turn and twist and all of that, right? And even though Twisted Minds vs Pro had all of that, and at the time when we were watching it, it felt life or death because we thought it was to qualify for Stockholm. The problem is afterwards, we found out it wasn't, which kind of undermined a lot of that tension. That everything we felt was a little bit fake, so it kind of sours the memories. So I think I'm probably leaning towards one of the Crazy Raccoon Falcons games, just because it felt like closest series, most excitement, most back and forth. Grand finals the stakes can't get, especially the Dallas one, because it was like the Dallas Grand Finals.
Yeah,
felt like the stakes could be higher.
If you're doing a Crazy Raccoons finals, I think the Asia Stage 2 was the most fun. That was actually that was an insane fucking series, by the way.
I think that was the best game. The one where they finished on Ilios and we casted it together, Xavier. That was probably the one that I was going to vote for the year, to be honest. That was the best match.
I think the stakes are high enough as well, because it is like the end of the Asia playoffs as well, right? Like it is the winner of the Asia region
for actually all the marbles
of the year. So I think before you disappeared, we were actually all coming to the same conclusion that the Stage 2 Asia playoffs between Falcons and Crazy Raccoon was the best series of the year.
Yeah, I think assuming we go. No, I think if we go over the qualifications you mentioned, I think it is. I think if you only consider how good the match was to watch, I really think that SO game has a chance. But I think if you consider everything, I think it's unquestionable. That was the game, the game of the year.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Even the Zeta Division match that was right before it was equally as good, to be perfectly honest.
Oh my god, that entire day was actually outrageous. Yeah, a lot of time for that one. And I'm sure we'll see these teams. Well, I guess maybe not. We might see them. No, we're not going to see them one more time because they lost today, didn't they? Cheers, Falcons. All right. Next award then, Uncoachable Joke of the Year. So, a hotly contested category. I feel like I've probably forgotten some, so feel free to add this if you want. But the current shortlist is Yaki, Killing Dante, the Kasaurus coaching documents, Korean Uncoachable, and I guess really our breakout moment that Koreans killed the Overwatch League, and just maybe a general anti-Korean sentiment throughout the year.
Yeah. My feeling, my vote, probably gonna go to the coaching documents, just because I think that it had the most legs throughout the year.
Yeah, it was timeless.
Everything else, there was a really long time with Yaki. There was Yaki mentioned for 15 episodes in a row. Yaki really had legs too. That hatred that I had, that went a long way. But coaching documents went even further. Coaching documents went fucking crazy. Who was coaching documents? Who started that?
It was because it was you, mate. It was you, Max. It was you. Yeah,
it was Kasaurus.
Didn't Cass say it?
Cass said it.
We had an episode, and Kasaurus said, I prepare the coaching documents, I do all of this, and then it stuck. It stuck from that point on. I think you were the first one to bring it up again. But as soon as you re-uttered those words into existence, it was immortalized. And did we tell this story on the podcast already? I can't remember, but me and Max were talking to Kasaurus at LAN, and he said when he was walking around Stockholm, every time he would walk past someone, he had his notebook, obviously, with all the stuff. Everyone would be shouting, "Those the coaching documents, mate! See, he's got the coaching documents." So I think it's ingrained now into the Overwatch fan base.
It's so crazy to have such an impact on the competitive community's perception of these fucking pros, and it's actually just ridiculous. Just people hurling shit at Kasaurus as he walks by because he's got a little notepad in hand.
You say that. I did have an interaction with Happy outside at Stockholm as well, where I think you went to get a coffee, Max, and then Happy goes to me, "Do you hate Yaki as well?" And I was like, never met the guy, honestly. I think he's okay.
I feel like Yaki was so good. And it was there was a golden period where the top comment was Yaki mentions, but then people killed it, people, every time Yaki would be mentioned on Twitter, everyone would spam at Unter, and it was used too much and it dried up. Whereas I think Max is right. The coaching documents, even to this day, it's timeless. Absolutely timeless. Cheers to that. So, yeah, I think I'm with Max in this one. I think document it up.
Agree, it has to be documents. I will say, I do want to give a special mention because there was something about that first time when Korean Uncoachable goes live for the first time,
I mean,
and I see the boys with the Uncoachable overlay. That was a good moment. It didn't have the same legs because they changed the name. Apparently, it was that name all along, but.
I mean,
they tried to
then
deny
they don't
the
have
moment.
the dogs for it. No, the dog in them. You know, they do like an episode every fucking 4 months now. They don't keep this shit going.
Yeah, they're not like us, incredibly consistent content powerhouses.
Every week.
Like, we're just constantly fucking grinding, dude. Look, there is one thing that I'll say. Plat Chat, they might be fucking clueless. And they might just be coasting through saying a bunch of shit that nobody agrees with and is all fucking nonsense. But at the end of the day, credit where it's due. Plat Chat, they are consistent. Those motherfuckers, rain or shine, rain or shine, they are just fucking there podcasting. They got nothing to talk about. Patch notes. They're like the flats of podcasts, but by God, they are consistent.
Yeah, the definition of quantity over quality.
Then, Flex DPS of the year. Oh wait, sorry.
No, Yaki didn't win.
Sorry,
Yaki, mate.
Focus,
Yaki,
Alpha. Oh, that's it. I know who's not winning producer of the year now. God damn it.
Congratulations.
That's actually such a mint picture, no? Like,
it is, except if there was a document in hand.
If he had his book in hand, it would be next level. He's got the fucking watch too. Like, oh my God.
That's probably cost a few bands, you know.
Few bob. Nah, dude, he's been an assistant. I know he's a head coach on Toronto.
Nah, mate, this guy makes mad money. Honestly, this guy is a money machine.
Mr. Money.
That's what they call him. So, Flex DPS of the year. Shortlist is Proper, Hitscan, Stalker, Kevster, and Sugar Free.
Actually, probably going to be one of the more difficult of the years to win.
There's a big problem here as well with the same thing we always say about Falcons is Proper was really good at Flex DPS when he played it, but he also spent half a year playing Hitscan, or like a really good chunk of a year playing Hitscan at least. And similarly to Stalker, he kind of finished the year playing a lot of Hitscan as well, you know? Like we talked about now Orisa Genji, Asia Grand Finals. Well, Stalker was playing Cass for most of that, you know? So it feels a little bit like, how do you compare that to people like Sugar Free and Hitscan who have just been on those heroes performing pretty consistently all year?
I think it's more of a credit to Stalker that not only was he like blatantly the best Echo, he was also flexing over the Hitscan and making the Hitscan role, like redefining the whole role, you know, like actually being a flex DPS that is so flexible that you're playing every single hero like at absolute top level and diffing everyone. Like he's diffing he's diffing Quartz on Widowmaker.
He really fucking had his number
in the clutch, you know, like it's actually I think for sure like it has to be Stalker without a shadow of a doubt, because you know like Sugar Free, like, you know, the best flex DPS in North America or whatever, but like doesn't have that like same he didn't play Echo so well that he just like single-handedly won his team the grand finals, you know. Stalker had like that full flexibility. I think Hitscan, like he played the flex heroes only, he got mega gapped by Proper on Genji in Asia, like mega gapped. Was
it only really Genji? I guess versus Proper, it was only like because first half of the year, I feel like it was all Hitscan.
He was the best.
Like if we did this 6 months into the year or something, or after Esports World Cup, it'd been Hitscan by a country mile, right? But that was also, I guess, a period of time where Falcons were dicking about with like having happy Stalker, then happy Proper, then like just rotating their DPS all the time.
I feel like we've done tank, Hitscan, flex, and main support all to crazy raccoons. I feel like if there was one role you would give to Falcons, it actually has to be this one, right? Like, it's just a little bit annoying that like they split it, because I was like, oh, it's Proper, but it probably is Stalker, but I feel like it has to be a Falcons player, this role in particular, because this was the only role where they like across like one or two metas felt like they had like a real edge, you know?
Yeah, because I feel like if you take maybe Farah out of the equation, Proper and Stalker are maybe just above Hitscan on most other heroes between them, right? Like maybe Hitscan's Echo is better than Proper's, right? For example, like. And because the success Falcons really found was when it was a double flex DPS meta, right? Because then the actual person getting gapped in a lot of these scenarios is Lip more than anything. And then if Lip and Hitscan both get gapped like they were at Stockholm, like they were even when it was Venture Genji at like Dallas as well. This is when it gets really out of hand, and that's where we see like Crazy Raccoon struggle the most this year.
Fuck it. I'm giving it to Stalker.
To Stalker? Yeah. Like if you could
Stalker.
sign one of these players, if you had to pick a player to sign out of those three, it would just be Stalker,
Yeah, it might be
right,
Stalker.
every time.
Yeah, probably would be, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, give it a Stalker. There he is.
Sticky.
So
The
fun,
lightest
sticky
trophy
dude.
in the world, Fat.
He's not even gripping the trophy. It's actually just stuck to his hands.
That's why he couldn't play today. He still had the trophy stuck in his hand. It was really hard.
It was like, yeah, no, way again.
All right. Then this one is for best cope of the year. So, obviously, we have Junkertown versus Ents, and we didn't need to swap to Widow situation. We had the existence of Ilios in the map pool every single time. And then, obviously, the cope. This one is, obviously, those first two are very much Chris cope. Maybe we could even add in Chris's cope that he wasn't fraud of the year. He's maybe like made another entry last minute
actually,
here.
bonus last minute fucking ballot thrown in.
But then
As the
also,
polls close.
I think a more general one, the idea that the West can beat the Koreans, because there was a sentiment before Dallas, then there was a sentiment before Stockholm as well, that Malga would be the great equalizer. But it seems to be pretty heavily proven to just be cope on both occasions.
Can I speak from the heart on this one?
Do you ever not speak from the heart, Chris? You're always welcome.
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, the problem with this category is in all of the Chris cope sections mentioned above, I was right in all of them. Like, I was 100%
the Ilios one
right.
you're not right on.
I'm so objectively so right on Ilios. It's insane. Like, this was the one. I rewatched that episode. You two are so fucking cooked. Like, you didn't even remotely understand the statistics of what I'm saying. And you just attacked my feelings, but you couldn't attack the point at all times. The Junkertown one, I was right. Me not being a fraud. I mean, surely I'm not the worst coach this year. That's fucking true. So I feel like at every cope section, I'm right. Even if it is cope, it's legit logical cope. Like logical, justifiable cope.
Can we have another additional ballot entry at the end here, which is
during
just
the
the fact that
cope of
Chris
the year
is like
segment.
genuinely incapable of ever recognizing that he might be wrong about something. Like the fact that even when he's presented with multiple cope segments throughout the year, where he was actually like pretty much proven wrong, yeah.
On which one? On which one?
He's saying that we can beat the Koreans. He thinks he was so right about that.
Okay.
Chris cannot beat the Koreans, right?
I did,
like
on the last
this
three
guy is such an egomaniac. He's incapable of believing that he could be wrong about anything. He's so happy to believe that he's right in every topic all the time. And if someone agrees with him, it means everyone must agree with him. So I think that the actual Chris Cope of the year is right now on the fact that Chris, he's just always coping because he's incapable of believing that he is wrong. That's my vote right now. This segment.
right/wrong because in the Junkertown, I was right. Ilios, I was super right. On not being the worst coach there, I'm right. On beating the Koreans, I was super wrong. Like, for sure, I was wrong. That's why that should be the cope of the year, because we were so many miles off these black guys. But on all the other little individual cope sections, I was fucking right in all of them. TBH.
Chris sees no grey area in any topic, and I think that is ultimately the essence
you guys
of
think
Chris.
I was wrong on Ilios, you guys are actually brain dead.
No, the Ilios one, I'll agree. Like, but the key point on Ilios is that you are saying Blizzard's map design team are the ultimate force for maps. And all their maps are good, and all their maps are equally valuable, and therefore they should all be used.
I'm saying the game of Overwatch is the game of Overwatch. You're trying to change the universe as opposed to just accept the universe.
No, because that's what you should do. You should only play the good maps. Every other game in history only plays the good maps. The only reason we play all the maps is because of Overwatch League and Blizzard forced us to. Why should we do what Blizzard forces us to when we no longer have to? The Overwatch League died. No, we're just only play the best version of the game.
Which COF maps are bad?
Antarctic Peninsula, I think, is bad. Particularly sub-level. Not sub-level.
That still gives me 7 brawl maps versus your 1 dive map, even if that's bad. You need to be statistically accurate. You need 4 more shit cough maps. Let's hear them.
Yeah, but
It's not about an even balance. It's about picking something that works for the competitive format. Yeah, this game is not, the map's not designed to be competitively fair. You just advocate for it because it suits you better.
I actually can't believe you guys are still in on. You guys are so cooked here. I get accused of being stubborn and can't believe I'm wrong. And here you two fucking idiots are arguing idiots again. That's insane to me, by the way, because it's so obvious statistically that if there's only one dive map and it gets put in every pool, that's unfair. Like, the fact you justify that is fucking crazy. There's no other game in the world which would be like, oh, you're only good at 10%? Yeah, no problem. We'll keep feeding into that, mate. But I mean, listen, the comment section spoke for itself.
It was mixed. It was mixed in the comment section.
Incredibly nuanced on like every topic, but unfortunately, Chris, you're like the essence of a populist politician, where it's like you will find someone that agrees with you, and you will say that is the consensus.
It was the most upvoted comment.
You are the one that is. You are the most susceptible to propaganda person in this room. Like, it's fucking crazy.
And you think there's fucking millions of secret homeless people in Korea, mate, and you know propaganda. Yeah, nice one, mate.
I knew it. It was so obviously just a matter of time before the prison system in Korea came up. It was unavoidable.
So yeah, my vote goes to Chris in this segment because I think he just like consistently demonstrates the fact that he's incapable of interpreting nuance and always sees only one side to every topic and thinks that there's always a hard yes or no answer to every issue.
Take that confetti down because we haven't fucking voted yet, mate. Take that confetti back.
It's always the correct stance. And
if you don't have animation to remove that confetti, I'm leaving.
Blade, play the confetti again, Alfred.
Get that out. Get that confetti out. The cope of the year is clearly that me in the Western teams could beat the Koreans. Every other cope section, I was undefeated on, objectively.
Play the confetti, Alpha. I assume you concur the vote, Xavier. I'm not delusional with this one.
I mean,
what was that?
My vote is that this cope right now is the culmination of all the cope combined.
I feel like the cope about the cope is the best cope.
Yeah.
Just because it's
get Chris up again. Play the fucking confetti. Play the confetti one more time.
Because it's cope doesn't mean it's wrong. All right, I'm fucking leaving.
While Chris hasn't got his headset on, he was actually right. It was the most upvoted comment, agreeing with him on Ilios on the previous video. But he'll never hear
I agree. I agree with that. But it's Reddit, so the first comment to get 5 upvotes will be at the top of the thread,
on YouTube, on our comments. On YouTube,
for all comment sections, like it's you get an early comment, which is one side of an argument, and then the argument will be immediately skewed in that direction all the time. You could do like a little. I swear there have been like experiments on that where they'll make like 2
you just
threads,
manipulate it,
and it's like basically the first like ever slightly upvoted opinion immediately becomes the top opinion. That's just how groupthink works, but Chris is a master of the debate by, calling the other side retarded, basically. So
yeah. I mean, if we weren't to give it to this one, I have to say, on the basis that whether he was right or wrong about Ilios, he did seem to actually change the rules.
Huh?
Like the rules are now, like the map pool for next season is slightly different, right? So like they've changed it, they've removed it.
But it's like now he's got like a separate complaint that it's like they've taken Ilios out
at the wrong time.
So there's going to be. I mean,
we'll save that code section for next year when we talk about next year and why it all goes wrong. Next up, we have personality of the year, and the shortlist for personality of the year: PGE, the populist vote, Tomathan, and Yubi.
Oof.
Now, Yubi's a controversial one, but I'd like to point out personality of the year doesn't necessarily mean
positive.
Doesn't have to be positive, And for someone, because how many times has Yubi done interviews this year or interacted on camera or done a post-game interview or anything like that? Yet somehow he's developed himself into the most hated figure in the scene.
Villain of Overwatch.
The villain, right? So there's got to be. I feel like that has to be acknowledged, and that every time every time a Twisted Minds game is on, even when he didn't play for most of the last half of or the last like stage of the year, most talks about player in Twitch chat, most talks about player on Twitter. So he's clearly had an impact, you know? So it
he has
depends
more
a little
people
bit.
rooting against TM than any other team, right? And I actually think you raise a good point. You do raise a good point.
And is that bigger than anyone in terms of a positive personality influence or, you know, like a nice guy type thing?
Well, I mean, if we want to talk about nice guys, I mean, there's a totally different person that we could consider, right?
I mean, Rakatak could be personality of the year.
Mr. Personality. I feel like I struggle to vote for UB. I got a lot of content out of UB. But at the same time, like PGE, his like explosion in popularity this year is like absolutely insane, and he's actually involved in the pro scene. So I think I'm unironically voting for PGE. You know, not just because I like thumbnail him, but because I feel like he's actually like insanely valuable for the pro scene. Like he's actually done so much just by virtue of the fact that he streams and he's fucking funny and he competes and he watches his friends compete too.
It's the first time in a while I feel like Overwatch has had a pro player who streams this much and is this popular as a result. Like quite a long time, right?
Yeah. I think very, very good to have someone like him. He's like a super that streams his matches and is a little smaller. But, you know, just a big streamer that streams his matches is a really useful, valuable thing for the scene.
Yeah.
And he's actually I watch his stream. Like he's fucking funny. Like he's a really good streamer. Not just for his matches, but just, you know, it's fun to watch him play.
Entertainment value. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can cop it.
Congratulations, PG. That's our thumbnail sorted too. Cheers.
Nice, finally. Okay. And then, disappointment of the year. So the shortlist is SSG, Kevster, International Lands, so just in terms of competitiveness and entertainment, and all of Western teams internationally.
I can't give it to all of Western teams internationally because Toronto Defiant did well at 2 lands.
Fight that a little bit.
We're gonna call them a Western team, so I can't possibly give it to them.
Only one land, right?
No, they did well at EWC and Stockholm.
But then if they did well at Stockholm, we did well at Dallas, right? Because they still didn't take any maps off the Korean team.
Didn't they come top 3?
Yeah, so did we in Dallas.
I
actually think I would have.
Dallas was less important.
I mean, fair. I would have gone for international tournaments in general because I actually think that EWC was actually quite fun. I think EWC was actually across like a really solid event, but the 2 OWCS lands I think actually were less fun. I mean, I feel like I shouldn't say this because I fucking hate Koreans, but it was less fun than just the Korean tournaments in general. You know, like objectively less competitive. Like there was only 2 teams that could win it, and there was only 2 teams which could take a map off those 2 teams. And I think, especially considering how we expected the international lands to go, or maybe expected isn't the right word, maybe how we hyped the international lands to go, they ended up being like Stockholm and Dallas. I think from like just a tournament perspective, ended up being kind of like boring. I think. In comparison to what they could have been.
Yeah,
I mean, Stockholm especially, I think. Like, I think as much as like the production and stuff goes up, despite there being an entire weekend of action, I feel like there's so few memorable moments from that tournament, memorable matches. Even NRG's deep run didn't feel that special. When really a team that's at 8th, expected to finish like bottom, doing as well as they did, should feel like something, but it didn't really feel like that the way they made their way through the lower bracket. And it just, I mean, it's the nature of 3-0s, right? But it just, nothing felt like it had any weight in that tournament.
Yeah, I think the matches were just like so shit across the board. There was like literally one match that I remember, and it was the Twisted Minds game. Like, everything else was just so wank. I really felt that, the tournament, like all the organization and stuff was totally fine. The stage was fine. The orchestra was cool, but the matches were just shite. $8.50. I basically like barely watched Stockholm. Like I barely remember it at all. That's why I
We
don't remember.
casted
That's why I
2
don't
days of
remember.
it.
You were there, mate.
This is not Stockholm. Sorry, not
Dallas.
Stockholm. Fucking
Dallas.
Dallas. Yeah, Dallas. Yeah. So like that's why I don't remember Chrissy's placement because I just like was tuning in and out and in and out.
It was the same as
very
Toronto's,
locked into
mate,
that.
in Stockholm.
That's wonderful. And then EWC, like that was the best LAN of the lot in terms of like having a multitude of fun matches. But like maybe international lands is the winner here because like I was gonna vote SSG, but it can't be SSG if they came top 3 at Dallas. To be honest, that's not fair.
And that can't be fraud of the year, presumably for the same reason, right?
I mean, I don't know about that one.
You've already coped your way out of that one, mate. Don't worry. Yeah, I think I'm just on the same page with international lands because it feels
boring.
like we only get 3 of them a year. They really actually need to be kind of good because it's not a lot of them. So if 2 out of 3 are bad, it's not great, is it? It's not great. So
It's not great.
Yes. So yeah, that was probably a big letdown since we get so few of them. And I think there's probably a sentiment in general that Stockholm and Dallas especially, because there was quite a small pool of teams, this is also part of a problem as well, in that you don't get to see, maybe if only 2 teams can win it, but there's a big battle for 3rd place between like we saw at Esports World Cup, right? The closest games were actually Toronto versus Zeta and SSG versus Zeta. And this is where it was being pushed. And it was like, now we get a little bit more of an insight into the power level between regions. But yeah, 1 out of 3 isn't great. What is this?
Congratulations, the world.
I was wondering what you're going to do for a picture of international lands, and I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't quite this. All right. So, worst guest of the year.
Ooh.
The shortlist for worst guest of the year. And again, we're doing the same thing as we did with best guest, where we're including the back end of 2023, basically, from the inception of Uncoachable. The worst guest is either Danny, Shockwave, or Rack.
So Danny, from a statistical point of view,
statistically,
terrible.
He is the worst. He's
the
he
lowest
was actually good.
His episodes were actually good. He contributed. He was funny. But if you include
the people
Danny
hate
in your
him.
title,
The people hate him.
No one watches this shit. It's insane. It's like a bug in the algorithm where if you put Danny, it's fucking blacklisted.
Yeah, I think Danny he doesn't pull numbers, right? But I didn't hate his episodes that much. I think that in terms of worst episode that we've ever had, the Shockwave episode was pretty chronic. The Shockwave episode I really did not enjoy one bit. But then in terms of uncoachable value, I actually think that it's just got to go to Rack because it was he came on and it was a struggle to convince him to come on because he didn't want to say he didn't want to speak bad. He's a nice guy. At the end of the day, Rack's biggest issue is that he's a nice guy. So he didn't want to come on because he didn't want to badmouth a Vale, he didn't want to badmouth Vegas Eternal, anything like that. But eventually he was convinced to come on and just tell a bit of his side of the story. But then he came on and he was just a politician. He was just I can't recall. But I don't remember. He actually didn't remember a damn thing apparently because he didn't want to say anything negative about anyone.
But this logic is why Shockwave is definitely the worst guest because Rack was at least kind of straight up with the fact he wasn't going to shit talk anyone. Whereas little Nicky, he was talking big pre-game. He's I got some fucking stories for you guys. And you stick the camera on this fucker, and not only does he have the worst mic in human history, he divulged fucking nothing. Punk, he got it all out. There was nothing Punk left behind. But Nicky promised us the world and then just had a shit performance. Whereas Rack, I kind of knew we weren't getting any juicy Paris stories just from the us trying to tease him into it,
Yeah, I guess that's true. Rack, did what it said on the tin, right? He told us from the onset, I don't want to badmouth anyone. Proceeds to come on, badmouth nobody. Nicholas, he came on, talked big game. Dog shit microphone, awful. Zero delivery.
Zero.
Yeah, fuck Nicholas. Shockwave, worst guest of the year.
I can cop it. The only saving grace for the Shockwave episode is his mic was so bad. Our current producer reached out to me in DMs, asked if we needed help with the audio issues. So there was some good came from the Shockwave episode, but
Oh my God.
I think really hard to give Shockwave too much credit for that, really.
We have Alpha because of Nicholas.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such bad knowing that.
But that wasn't intentional from Shockers, right? It just happened.
He just came on to ruin our fucking podcast.
Like,
Good things happen
don't
around
forget
here.
as well, there would be future episodes where I would fuck up the audio, so Alpha would have come eventually. Like, I would have found a way to fuck up the audio enough to get help. Eventually, someone would realize I was a man in need of serious help. All right. Here he is. Give him some confetti.
Enjoy that, Nicky, mate.
Then our next award is for Coaster of the Year, which basically just means the person who has just chilled, not invested a lot of time or effort, but for some reason or another has continued to find pretty steady work throughout it. So the shortlist for this one is Mr. X, Avast, and Platchat. So Avast is sort of like he's sort of got himself in here twice a little bit here, but
I don't think it's Avast. I don't think that Avast was like present enough to be a coaster.
He had a job for the first half of the year as well, right? Which
exactly
is like a mitigating factor here.
I felt
just
Jaws
lost his
should have been
energy
on this
talking,
list.
though.
That's what I thought. I thought
We can
Jaws
add
was
it.
good.
We can add Jaws.
Stick Jaws on there. There
But
you go,
sub
Jaws.
out Avast. Put Jaws in instead. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sub
The thing is with-
substitution.
The thing is with Mr. X is he's kind of just been like, this X hasn't changed. This guy's been coasting for like 6 years straight, you know? Like this guy's just been straight up, got the job and just been on one continual coast, you know? Whereas maybe it's not like me, but maybe I'm coping right now. I feel like there was a time where Jaws was like super invested, you know? Like low-key actually like a really good caster, really good up-and-comer, like played the game a lot. And I feel like this year, especially when we did our last caster topic, his coast has become more and more evident. Especially, ironic, if you watch Platchat and he's making comments about how Astro's Brig is going to let us down in the Amalgama, and it's like this guy hasn't played Brig. He hasn't been a raid. He's never been a Brig. You've casted the games and he hasn't been the Brig, you know. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't know if you give it more to Mr. X, who's just been. Or if it's Jaws who is like, I don't know, like this, you know? Wait, it's just Platchat.
I see what you mean about Jaws. He still makes like I checked his YouTube just now. He still makes like the occasional video. You know, like he did a couple of those deep dive videos this year. He tried to do like a different type of content as well. Like he's only got the one video, but he's done like some bits and pieces here and there. I think it's kind of hard to discount the fact that he was saying stuff, you know, like, Astro's Brig is going to let them down when it's like everyone knew. Like, and you literally. Like,
Well, it wasn't a
watch the
secret
games, and
either.
it's like
Yeah,
Landon
the
will-
games
had played, yeah.
Yeah. Like Landon's playing Brig in these mirrors and stuff. So it's like, you know, that's something that's kind of hard to overlook. But I do think that like Coaster of the Year, it's like Mr. X is kind of goated, no? Like I feel like he's actually like S+ tier coaster.
He made the
I think, like, it's
time.
hard to give it. I find it hard to give it to Platchat on account of the fact that Platchat is like, you know, they put effort in. Like even if you don't agree with their takes, they're putting effort in. Like they make the podcast more than we do, right? That's not coasting, that's effort. But
I guess that would be like
Mr. X
out
is
of
just.
touch. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. X is actually just like hard fucking chilling. Just pulls up on the day.
Do you reckon
gets the
Mr.
show
X
done,
watched
and then
Super Cup?
disappears.
Yeah, he was tuning in to see what the hero band meta is.
But to be fair to Mr. X as well, actually, nobody does it better than him. If we'd been running this podcast for the last 5 years, he could have like
It would be
a whole.
5 times.
He would have a cupboard full of these awards. You know, he would be.
No,
and
you're
sometimes if you've,
But
if
he's
you've
such a
you've
good
go.
coaster is the thing. Like that's why the reason that he's the coaster of the year is because it's like, okay, for example, I saw a Reddit thread which was about Xavier and I, right? Which is saying Xavier and I's casting kind of underrated. You know, like people were just like gassing it a little bit. Just some random Reddit thread with 60 upvotes about how like, you know, we're good casters. And then the top comment, I'm actually going to find it. I need to get the wording right. There it is. It was the downvoted one. They say modern day sideshow /Bren, not as insightful as Uber and Mr. X casts at times, but man, they are some funny lads. And it's like, I just thought like it's insane that like
that's the difference.
They're saying that like the insights on Overwatch are what separates us from being like Uber and Mr. X. You know, like it's not about like the quality of the casting or the polish of the product. Yeah. We just don't know Overwatch as well as Mr. X, and that was the thing that was like fucking crazy to me, like actually fucking crazy, because it's like I have no reservations about saying that Uber X is a better casting duo than us, right? But like the quality of the analysis, that's the one thing where it's like I'm so confident that we know the game better. Like, but that's the only thing I'm confident in.
But what you see, Max, this is just another feather in Mr. X's cap. Because
this is pro him. He's a god-tier coaster.
The best coasters, you don't realise they're coasting. That's why they're allowed to do so much coasting. All these people we realise are coasting, they're bad at it. They've given the game away. Mr. X
this was
is
in
just
defense of him.
Unchallenged. Yeah,
100%. 100%.
Same page.
Because he might get the job next day, you know? He might
actually. I'm sure he will. I'd be shocked if he doesn't.
This guy's going to coast into one more, yeah. Is it? Okay. He's the GOAT. He's the seeker of coasting, you know?
Holy shit.
Look at TVNT in the background with those hands.
Fucking... Why did he do this, you know? Like he
should have done. Look at him
go. Okay, then we're reaching the end, but the next category is Blizzard Blunder of the Year. The nominees are Circuit Points, the entire system, maybe culminating in that VP TM match that wasn't really the end. The Dallas April Fool settings, this is the one, obviously, our man on the ground, Chrissy, had to solve for him because we were just adding to the delays. And then, just in general, the EMEA and NA group stage. So more of a format blunder at the start of the year that we would have this big group stage across 2 weeks, taking up, 6, 7 broadcast days? Maybe 6 in total. And it would just be dog shit games, the most one-sided games you can, and we were just stuck with that all year, essentially. Yeah. Those are the 3 nominees.
I'd probably add, like, the partnership program execution. But I think also we can't give it to that yet because that's next year, and also we probably can't talk about it too much.
We can't we can't say exactly why.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I actually defend the circuit point system because I think the execution feels shit, but it's also one of those where almost like no one can find a better solution. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's fucked, but find me a solution which doesn't also have loopholes that.
It's just straight qualification, right, for the lands.
Yeah, but then like you start to like... Yeah, but
you win a tournament, you qualify type thing.
But then stage 3 and stage 1 are just totally fucking worthless, you know? Like, actually, like, mean nothing.
Or you do it like stage 1 winner goes, and then stage 2 one first and second goes or something. Like, it's not perfect, but it's like, it's cleaner.
But that's what I mean, right? Like, Circuit Points isn't perfect, but Circuit Points also got unlucky, right?
At the start of the year, were we able to call this? Like, there were some problems with Circuit Points, right? But I don't think anyone foresaw the exact problem that we ran into with UB's number of maps played and all of that.
I swear Blizzard got so unlucky, by the way, with the TM situation. Like, the odds of that exact scenario happening must be so fucking low. Like, if you ran the exact same system, there's no way it happens again. Whereas I think... Like, if we're talking about the award, I feel like the fact that we spent 2 weeks on groups was a continual insane misplay, which should have been fixed after like 1 or 2
It could also have been fixed, right? That could have been changed.
Right. Because I can find a way better solution like that, you know? Whereas Circuit Points, I think everything has like, oh, this might be better, but then what if this, you know? I think, I mean, I think we have changed it for next year, but I think the fact that we spent twice as much time on group stages than we did on playoffs, where the good teams are actually playing each other, has to be a mistake.
You know, when we were talking about best game of the year as well, and actually lots of the candidates, you know, we nominated 2 from the Asia or between the Korean teams, but we could have actually, like, that Falcons Zeta game to qualify for Stockholm could have been up there. Even the Falcons Zeta game to qualify for Dallas could have been up there, right? There was actually probably way more of these happening in Korea, and I don't think it's because there's inherently more exciting games happening in Korea. It's just because the best teams play each other more often in Korea. So that it's a numbers game, right? And it's just a higher percentage you'll get some more of these close series, right? Because there are also plenty of series in Korea where Crazy Raccoon just 3-0'd Zeta or something, and it was a bit of a anticlimax and stuff. But yeah, that probably felt the most impactful one. I think the Circuit Point one was like an interesting experiment. Hard to see exactly the problems you would run into. And there were some loopholes exploited, right? Like Goomba was signing players to try and manipulate this system, which is a bad thing. It actually turned out to be a bad thing for the teams who had their players poached, obviously. A bad thing for the players who were actually signed to the team just to rot on the bench as well. It just was like a bad thing overall. Even stuff right at the end, it wasn't that big a deal, right? But what was it TSM at the time? Capitology's like final punt at getting to Stockholm when they blew up like 2 or 3 rosters to Frankenstein the highest circuit point combination, which again just doesn't feel like
the
what
right
you
way
want to
do
happen.
it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that actually, and it also doesn't do what the circuit points were meant to do in terms of protect the players, protect the teams, encourage stability, etc. So, but I think it's like it was an attempt to solve it and it didn't work. Whereas for group stage, I feel like a more obvious problem from a get-go and a continuous problem that could have been changed much more easily halfway through. Like the circuit point is hard to change halfway through, I think. So yeah, group stage, then.
Yeah, I think so.
Nice.
Cheers to the group stage.
All right. No more group stage. So to be fair to Blizzard, fixed their biggest blunder of the year, which moves us on to our penultimate award, which is one of the big ones, Player of the Year.
Oof.
So Proper, Hitscan, Junbin, Lip, and Stalker are our nominees for this one. I feel like this one's really tough.
It actually is really tough.
You have to factor in recency bias, right? Like Proper, really weak start of the year, really strong finish. Hitscan maybe the inverse of that, right? Lip pretty consistent, but then maybe like once we see him on his Reaper heroes again, weak finish.
My feeling is that Jumbin was like throughout the entire year rock solid, and he had something special, you know, like he had the wrecking ball thing, but he was also just like rock solid throughout. Genuinely, it felt like, why are they ever subbing
every hero?
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like he really had every hero covered. He seems insane at Hazard even now. He seemed insane at Malga in the playoffs, you know, like he seemed better than Harman at Swerve at Malga.
I think he was
potentially, but his team was just letting him down elsewhere, you know, like Hitscan's getting diffed, the backline's getting diffed. So IMO, I think it is Junbin, like, because he really, like, all throughout the year, everything that he played, it all turned to gold. Everything he touched.
Yeah, there's part of me that feels like, because Stalker's finish has been so good, but that's kind of just form as well, right? Like right now, if you say who's the best player in the world on form, it has to be probably Stalker right now. But across the year, really hard to argue, I think, with a lot of what Junbin achieved. And I think you're right about like the Malga at Stockholm as well, and that he probably still was just the better one. And then even on Orisa in stage 2, when it was that, I don't think Junbin was the problem necessarily at all either, you know? Like I think he's going blow for blow. He's got every tank in his pool. He's doing up the best team in the world. And even at some parts, he's the biggest reason they're winning some of these maps as well.
Fuck, I think you're right. I just think I can't counter it. I think everyone else has too many like drawbacks to it, you know?
There's a caveat against everyone else's, right? Like, Stalker didn't play
it's
this
actually
much.
really
had a bad
tough
start.
this
Hitscan had a bad finish. Lip didn't. Like, Lip was definitely the best Hitscan, but I think it's really hard to argue Lip would be best player in any of these scenarios, right? Like, it just feels like his good heroes weren't relevant enough of the year to have like that meaningful impact. Like, you did see him do it on when he got to play like bits of Sojourn and bits of Cass, but just wasn't enough of a year to really justify being player of the year. So it might just be a Junbin sweep.
Yeah, fair enough. Congratulations, Junbin, mate.
That's 2. from the Uncoachable Awards show, jumping, mate.
Goat.
Gonna hang that up on the wall. That's goat. His internal monologue
That's
said
goat.
that.
That's goat.
Yeah.
He probably would have said it in Korean, though.
I'm not doing the accent.
You're not doing the voice?
If somebody doesn't have an internal monologue, like how do they think?
Actually, true.
Genuinely, like I don't understand that. Like how does that work? Somebody with no internal monologue whatsoever. Because you were saying that lots of people don't have one, right?
Is it 30% of people don't have it or something like that? Chris, you're normally the numbers guy.
Nobody says that they don't have one, though, right? So, like, how does this work?
I mean,
I've
I've
never
got
met
one.
someone that says I don't have one.
It
I've
tells
got
me I'm
one.
the goat. I got one. Do you argue with yourself in your head?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then do you ever
that
say?
must be really challenging for you on account of the fact
No,
that
it
you're
is.
right.
Two
I've never
people who
realized.
are always right.
No, okay. Can I let you into a secret? Since it's just me, us guys here
Yeah,
again.
just us three.
Yeah.
Like
Amongst
sometimes,
friends.
right? Sometimes the internal monologue, I have the debate, right? And it's like the two sides talking. And then I always say this thing in my head. And I feel like when I say it's so weird, it might, like, I don't say it out loud in my mind. I always say, you know, I actually agree with me here. I actually say those words in my head.
No
I'm
way.
like,
You're
Actually,
an
yeah.
actual freak.
yeah, I actually agree with me. Yeah, that's actually true. That's what we should do tomorrow. You know, like I say like those, like I'll debate it and I'm like, yeah, I'm actually right there. So yeah, I mean that's my internal monologue.
Great point, mate. Yeah, good job. Yeah, we'll do that tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's literally what I say, and then I say that's good.
I also realise, as we've done this, I've actually forgotten one award. So we're going to take a brief pit stop because we did Personality of the Year, but we also had an award for Unpersonality of the Year. So the person who lacks the most personality of the year. And it was hard to maybe pin it on an individual because it felt like it came in clumps. So we've got Twisted Minds as our first nomination, Ents, a very strong contender, as our second nomination, and then our third and final nomination is the entire nation of Korea.
I mean, this is a tough This is a tough award.
Sorry, what was number one?
Twisted
Ents.
Minds. Because
I feel like TM inadvertently has a
yeah.
But they never
TM
do
in
it.
like
They just
they don't do anything, but they're
anything.
hated. But that's good.
Intent
That's
doesn't
goat,
matter.
you know?
though. That's good. Yeah.
That's goat, mate.
That's
So I
great.
think can't be
Okay.
TM. I feel like
Ents
Ents
are strong
so
though, right?
Boring.
Every
They are
interview-
so boring.
Blood from a stone with no
Yeah.
size.
Like
Yeah.
Mr. X, like talking to them is just there's no way to make it work, you know?
You know what Mr. X talking to Ents is? That is a room full of people without an internal monologue.
I mean, that's actually true. There's no way there's an internal
I can actually
monologue.
believe that for like Kevster that there is no internal monologue because I remember like there were these moments in Face would describe them where he was trying to talk to Kev about like why do you do this or whatever, like why are you doing that, and he's like, I don't know, I just did it. So he's probably like actually reasonable chance that Kevin doesn't have an internal monologue on account of the fact that it's like he can't articulate why something is occurring, you know? He just does it on feel. And maybe if you do stuff on feel all the time, it means that you don't have an internal monologue. And maybe you're also going to be Unpersonality of the Year. But does one Ents really trump the entire nation of Korea?
Oh, it's a good question. But it's possible it does, to be honest.
Who were the big
Did the nation of
personalities
Korea
from
get
Korea
bailed
this
out
year?
by, I think, Korean Uncoachable and Illusion sitting next to us at the playoffs?
Illusion
honestly, yeah.
Wait, Moon as well is actually a good candidate, right? I think his and Krusty's interviews were good when they did the little pre-game interviews. Moon did actually sing on stage at one point as well because he promised
it's
to.
Ents.
Like,
it's Ents.
It's
Kevin's
Ents.
never
actually-
singing on stage.
Could you imagine if Kev had to sing on stage or Vestala? It would never happen.
Yeah, no, the esport would die.
All right, so it's Ents then. All right, and then let me check. I've just not entered anything else while I'm on this. But I think that was the only slight misstep we've taken, which means we're on to the big one.
This is the
Client of the
big one.
year.
Ah,
So, a few nominees from different episodes here. So, this is a classic client moment. From episode 22 with Crimzo, the client of the week winner was Custer falling for Jake's scam. Do you remember when Jake lost access to his account? And then, Jake could have been scammed, But Custer clicking Jake's link because Jake had made him a new game to play. This is a classic client moment. Then following up in the McGravy episode, maybe just the entire thing, but mainly viewer cancelling Sam and then M80's roster getting completely reshuffled as a result. And then when M80 dropped the roster, viewer tweeting and complaining like, oh, I don't know why they picked up this shit roster now. Like, come on. Put the pieces together. Then episode 26 with Jake, Ms. Liz, obviously, for being against sports washing, but baiting way more sports washing that would have happened without her. Then final nominee from the episode with Zera, episode 28, was Flair Toga, who, if you remember, was the user who came to play marbles. Refused to, stated obviously that there's no way you can lose at a casino, and there's no downsides of going to a casino, and that she hates me, doesn't want to play in the stream anymore, and that lasted for all of 7 minutes before she played in the chat one more time. So that was, those were 4 nominees, all slightly different in terms of, you know, some of the more serious topics than others, but what are we feeling? What are we leaning towards in terms of the biggest client moment from the year? Because there's something really nice about Custer's, because it's such a clean client moment, right? But it's too small. It's too small.
I'm not
but
voting
it's a
for
really
Custer,
clean
mate.
moment. But
I have to
it
decide,
can't be the biggest.
because I have to decide what do I hate more, because these are 2 things I hate so much. One, we have anonymous Twitter accounts. I fucking hate that, you know? Like, I'm a big believer that your face should be attached to your profile. And I actually think there should be an option on Twitter where if you pay $10, you turn their webcam on and see what they're doing live at that moment. I actually feel like that's an insane step to stop these anonymous Twitter accounts, because they're going to chill out, you know? If I can just hack their webcam and I can see them in the moment, it's fucked. At the same time, I hate virtue signaling fucking idiots that don't have a fucking clue what they're talking about. So Ms. Liz really, really deserves Client of the Year for that moment. But I don't know between the 2 of them where I go, because it's a lot of hate from me on both sides, you know?
I feel like for me it has to be between viewer and Ms. Liz as well, because these are the 2 moments that had the biggest repercussions as well. Like, the others were stupid moments, make you a client. But I feel like viewer actively disrupted and ruined the M80 roster. And then apparently, to the main upset of themselves, like, I didn't want that roster to be signed, ruined their own day. And same with Ms. Liz, right? Not supportive of Esports World Cup, not supportive of sport washing, but inadvertently creates a way bigger problem than would have happened without if they just not got on Twitter that day. It would have been actually a better situation for them from their perspective. So I feel like those are the 2 front runners.
My feeling was that, like, you know, Ms. Liz, what they did, it came from a good place. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that I would give Ms. Liz Client of the Year on account of the fact that it's like, you know, that Ms. Liz is like anti-Saudi for ethical reasons and is trying to take like a stance on that. Whereas
anti-Saudi to get likes on Twitter.
I mean, you know, that's your belief. But then viewer is like actually anti-racist to get likes on Twitter, but actually demonstrably cares more about the result that it had on the roster. You know, like viewer leaked all of this racism stuff because it would get them likes on Twitter and get them the dopamine. And then when it actually had consequences for the roster, viewer is like, these M80 guys, what the fuck are they doing? These guys are dickheads. So I think that viewer is by far the Client of the Year, because Ms. Liz was you know, posting anti-Saudi sentiment from an ethical standpoint, and then the blowback was actually, you know, to an extent, it was like players being clients in the sense that it's like, you know, they were defending the Saudis in a way that was like actually exactly what was wanted from the sports watching perspective. So I think that the players were in a way big clients there too. But for viewer, it's actually just like what M80 did in response to what viewer leaked was completely reasonable. And then viewer, too brain dead to understand that, you know, if you leak that a player is racist, them getting cut from the roster is an expectation.
I think it is more client on paper, because Ms. Liz had unintended consequences, right? They were hoping for one set of outcomes. They got a different set of outcomes. On the other hand, viewer was just surprised there was an outcome. He was surprised he could do something for dopamine and it would have some sort of consequence in the real world once he sends it.
It's like Misler's take was wrong, you know? Viewer, what he reported, that was fact. The consequences of those facts, those hurt his feelings.
Wait,
but like the consequences were so obvious.
Here's a counterpoint though. Isn't Misler's a journalist?
No.
A journalist, you know,
like, is that not her profession, or is it her intended profession? LARPing journalist. But then to get the facts wrong, that's a client move if you are a journalist, right?
I'm voting Misler.
This is a tough one.
Max, you're voting viewer, right? You're viewer.
Yeah, I'm voting viewer.
All right, it's all up to you, mate. X, all up to you, mate. Big moment. Client of the year. This is the award of the year.
I feel like, and maybe there is an element of recency bias here because I'm so pissed off at all the anonymous fucking leakers and how stupid they are. But all of these current leakers do the same thing, right? Where they're just so surprised there's consequences to their fucking actions. Did you see the one? I forget which bloody one it was. Who tweeted like today or something like, "Oh, don't get mad at me if some of these are wrong." I was like, "Fucking great!" Like. So I'm really pissed off at people who seem to have that worldview that they can just conduct themselves. I mean, kind of what Chris was saying earlier, like no consequences to what they fucking put out there in the world, and they think it's just fine. Fucking grow up. So I think I'm actually viewer pilled on this one here, just for all of that. And I think viewer, client of the year for not just.
I mean,
give him the fucking confetti.
There's been a lot of clients. It's impressive.
It was a tight fought. It was a tight fought one.
Was
brutal.
All right then.
Maybe the client of the year is the friends we made along the way.
Wait, is that it?
That's the end, mate.
We're not doing Flat's moment of the year.
We didn't have a short list for Flat's moment of the year.
There's one of the 63 roll for your sandwich videos or the August patch notes, but like I couldn't decide. There was just too much high quality content on his YouTube channel for me to possibly nail it down to one. But my God, there is so much good content on Flats too. Like if you want to listen to someone reading every word of the patch notes blog for 36 minutes, painstakingly slowly, then Flats is your content creator on YouTube. And I have it on good authority that he saved at least one life. So, yeah, I'll put a pin
I actually read that earlier today from a trustworthy source.
How long was this episode? I feel like we actually went quite long in the end, though.
It's just like 3 hours almost now. I was a bit.
We had a lot of topics actually. I kind of realized when we were partway through, like, there's a lot.
2:35, not bad. All right, that's good behavior, boys.
That's good.
Can you believe it's a year of Uncoachable? It's actually mental we fucking kept this going for a year.
Yeah, I really thought it would be done by now.
Yeah, I mean, you think we'll get to 2? I actually think we're going to.
I think we will. I think we're definitely getting to 2 at this point with how it's looking. It's a 2-year stretch for sure.
I think we can outlast Plat Chat. I think they'll die before us.
Dude, Plat Chat's been around for years.
No, I think we got it. We got that youthful energy, you know. We're just getting started.
We've got the zest of youth. What do you mean? They're replacing people as well. They've got Avril, young blood in the
young blood. The newcomer of the year.
Plat Chat newcomer of the year, and it's Avril.
Newcomer of the year, Avril.
Can we get some confetti for Avril, please, Alpha? The button's gone. He's got no confetti. He's probably talking to his mum again.
It was actually it was the last load of that cannon. We're out of confetti.
We're fucking tapped on confetti now.
Oh, nice. There you go.
There we go.
Nice. All right.
What if we don't win podcast of the year next year? That's the real question. Who can beat us, though?
Who can beat us?
I don't know.
We've had imitators this year, but no true rivals.
Marvel.
Oh. Cheers. All right. It's been a pleasure, boys.
Good year. Good year. We'll be back next year with probably an episode that will explain a lot of what's going on now, partnership teams, roster signings, all of this. That'll be at some time next year. So stay tuned for that. Have a good Christmas. Have a good New Year. And thanks for all the support this year.
Yeah. I think I can get away with leaking this because we won't post it in time, but I am on Cloud9 with Knife.
And I am on Gen G with Krusty. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, everybody. See you next year.